Chapter 1139. His avatar is in the ancient desolate realm. Yichen's expression finally changed a little. He had long since seen that the first emperor cultivated the three pure ones technique. He separated the jade body, the evil body, and the avatar. The ing that he knew was the evil body. If the jade body, the evil body, and the avatar were all merged into one, even Yichen would have a headache by then. Of course, Grand Tutor Ning said back then he wanted to cultivate the three pure ones technique crazily, but he failed. The jade body died on the spot, and the evil body was suppressed by the 9 schools on the celestial burial planet. As for the avatar, it was brought to the ancient desolate realm. Yichen came to a realization. Earth and the ancient desolate realm were far apart. The 9 schools separated the evil body and the avatar completely to prevent the first emperor from recovering completely. It's getting late. You should go back. Grand Tutor Ning stood up at that moment and looked straight at Yichen. He said, I admit that you're talented, but don't be too ostentatious in the ancient desolate realm. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. As for the birth of this son, he paused for a moment and said hesitantly, it's better if you don't participate. The Emperor of Dali isn't as simple as you think. Even though I've been with him for 1,000 years, I don't dare to say that I really understand him. If there's any news about the ghost ship in the future, please let me know. Yichen clasped his fists at him. As soon as he said that, he removed the seal on the surrounding space. With a flash, he rushed to the shore. The donkey from before was standing under a crooked locust tree. It was holding a tree branch in one of its hooves and drawing on the ground. Its body was covered in all kinds of mosquitoes. Even so, it could not be stopped. The ground was covered in dense mathematical formulas and equations, and they were all modern Arabic numerals. Teacher, I proved that 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. I proved that 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. Yichen saw it wake up when he passed by it. It ran to Meng Meng excitedly. The little girl coughed and said in an adult tone, Good disciple, well done. Keep it up. I believe in you. The donkey returned to its original spot to write mathematical formulas again. Yichen's face twitched slightly. He looked at the little girl and said, Not bad, Yi Meng Meng. You're just a kindergartner, but you've accepted a top scholar as your disciple. Daddy, it's the one who insisted on acknowledging me as its master. The little fellow playfully stuck out its tongue. Let's go back. Yichen shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He carried her in his arms while the blind old man walked over and led them away. From afar, he could hear all sorts of screams coming from behind him. Master, don't hit me anymore, I was wrong. Fool, let's go and copy some scriptures. Dali Dynasty, in the rebuilt Imperial Garden. The emperor of the Dali Dynasty stood with his hands behind his back. In front of him, there was a beautiful woman in revealing clothes bowing. Are you sure you heard me clearly? The emperor of Dali asked. The gorgeous woman raised her head slightly, and fish scales could be seen at the corner of her eyes. Your Majesty, it's exactly the same. You can go now. When the gorgeous woman heard this, she immediately jumped into the water and turned into a goldfish, swimming along with the current. Grand Preceptor, why are you forcing me? The Emperor of Dali was expressionless, and his voice was extremely calm. I've already made my move. Let's see how you're going to deal with it. In the courier house of the Dali Dynasty's capital, the blind old man brought Yichen to stand outside the courier house. He stopped and said, Mr. Yi, Ms. Mu and the rest have been arranged inside. Room number 17 of Building A. Yichen nodded lightly and walked into the courier house while carrying the little girl. After finding the room, he saw Jior standing outside the door. Her fingers were tightly clasped as she paced back and forth. Her little face was filled with anxiety. Young master, you're finally back. Jior welcomed him as soon as she saw him. Yichen glanced at the empty room and narrowed his eyes. What happened? Not long after you left, someone invited my young mistress to a banquet. She didn't agree, but she was forcefully taken away. Jior said with bloodshot eyes. A ferocious gleam flashed through Yichen's eyes as soon as he heard that. Where? Who took her away? It's at the Waterview Tower, Jior said. Let's go. Yi-chun turned around immediately after saying that. Yi-chun turned around after saying that. 5 kilometers away from the north gate of the Dali dynasty's capital, there was an antique pavilion that rose from the ground. It had 9 floors, and it was very magnificent. Countless passers-by looked at the colossus in front of them with respect because it was the most luxurious restaurant in the capital, the Wave Viewing Tower. Ordinary people could not enter even if they had money. The people who entered were either officials above rank 5 or members of the royal family. The most terrifying person was the boss of the Wave Viewing Tower, who had never shown his face. It was rumored that even the crown prince and the others did not dare to cause trouble there. On the 6th floor of the Wave Viewing Tower, several old men stood respectfully at the side. Each of them had a dense aura, and they were all martial kings. The huge round table was currently filled with many people. Most of them were young men and women, and they were dressed in noble clothes. If one took a closer look, they would realize that these people were led by a young man in the middle. The young man was dressed in cold clothes, and his face was as feminine as a woman's. Young Master Yaoyue, it's our fortune that you're able to come to the Dali dynasty, and it's also my fortune. I'd like to propose a toast to you. A young man sitting on the left slowly raised a cup of wine, stood up, and smiled at the feminine young man. If there were outsiders present, they would definitely realize that the young man who proposed a toast was the 5th prince of the Dali dynasty. Although his status was not as high as that of the 3 princes, he had been faintly favored in recent years. However, even though he was a prince, when facing the feminine young man, his tone was still polite, and he seemed to be trying to curry favor with him. 5th prince, you're too kind. Young Master Yaoyue smiled faintly, raised his cup, and drank it in one gulp. Although the Greater One sect is located in the South Sea, we have been on good terms with the Dali dynasty for generations. This time, my father is in seclusion and cannot spare any time, so he sent me to congratulate you on your birthday. Young Master Yaoyue, could it be that the Greater One Taoist Lord is cultivating some amazing magic? A beautiful woman on the side asked in surprise. She was the Virgin of the Moon Clan of the North Sea. She looked charming and alluring, but she had reached the martial king level at a young age. The Moon Clan was in the North Sea, and its status was equivalent to that of the Dali dynasty. It still had a martial saint in it. My father has just made some progress. It can't be said to be cultivating some amazing magic. Young Master Yaoyue shook his head slightly, then looked up a young man in black beside him and said, Xiao Wu, I heard that you defeated the younger generation of all the sects in the West Sea. Well done. The young man in black bowed slightly and said cautiously, Brother Yaoyue, I was just playing around. It's not something to be proud of. Don't belittle yourself. The sect of Grains is the overlord of the West Sea, and its resources are not as good as the Greater One sect. Young Master Yaoyue shook his head slightly. At this time, an old man quickly walked over and whispered a few words in his ear. Young Master Yaoyue had a mocking look on his face. Bring him here. Chapter 1140. The old man nodded and left in response. The surrounding people had clearly guessed something and could not help but reveal looks of anticipation. Only a few women had enmity in their eyes. Young Master Yaoyue looked at a young man sitting in the corner and said, Xiling, sit over here. The young man called Xiling stood up instinctively. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he could not help but feel nervous. However, he still gritted his teeth and sat beside young Master Yaoyue, calling out in awe, Young Master! If Yi-chun was here, he would realize that the other person was the Heavenly Sword Sect's Wang Xiling that he had seen at the city gates. I brought her to you. You know what to do later. Young Master Yaoyue's expression was calm as he said, In short, your Heavenly Sword Sect cannot afford to lose face, and my Greater One Sect cannot afford to lose face even more. Wang Xiling's expression changed slightly when he heard this. Just as he was about to speak, he saw 2 old men walking in with a woman. It was Mu Kaiwei. However, at this moment, her dantian had been forcefully sealed, so she was no different from a weak woman. The room immediately fell silent. When they saw the woman's face clearly, many of the men present were stunned. One of the old men pushed Mu Kaiwei over then said to young Master Yao Yu, "Young Master, I brought her." Young Master Yao Yu looked at Mu Kaiwei with interest. "You're the so-called number one beauty of the Tianfengxi area?" Mu Kaiwei looked up and was met with an extremely feminine man's face. The other party's gaze did not contain any lust, only coldness. She did not say a word, a cold smile on her face. However, an old man behind her suddenly released the pressure of a martial king. "Kneel when you see the greater one's sex, young master." Boom! Mu Kaiwei felt a mountain-like pressure coming at her. Her body uncontrollably knelt on the ground as scarlet blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. "Raise your head," young Master Yao Yu said indifferently. Mu Kaiwei was unmoved. However, someone forcefully lifted her face up. Mu Kaiwei glared at young Master Yao Yu, still not saying a word. However, her eyes were filled with unyielding will. Young Master Yao Yu pretended not to see her. After sizing her up, he said, "She is quite pretty. No wonder I call her the number one beauty of the heavenly Windsea region. I think you must be very curious and angry right now. Why did I order people to bring you here?" He carefully played with the wine in his hands, then pointed at Wang Xiling beside him. "Let me introduce someone to you, Wang Xiling, from the Heavenly Sword Sect. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Sword Sect is a subsidiary sect of my Greater One Sect, and Wang Xiling has trained with me before." Wang Xiling lowered his head, not daring to look at Mu Kaiwei. "So what?" Mu Kaiwei finally spoke. "Good question." Young Master Yao Yu was slightly startled, clearly not expecting that she would dare to question him. He smiled and said, "An hour ago, Ziling met you outside the city. He just wanted to get to know you, but you told him to get lost." He slowly took out a handkerchief and gently wiped his slender fingers. "I don't like such actions." Mu Kaiwei suddenly laughed. Yao Yu frowned. "What are you laughing at?" Mu Kaiwei looked straight at him and said with a cold smile, "Then what do you want? Kill me?" Impudent. Just as she finished speaking, a woman on the seat stood up and slapped her. She berated, "Little bitch, do you know who's in front of you? The young master of the Greater One Sect, young Master Yao Yu." She slapped him. A red mark immediately appeared on Mu Kaiwei's face, but her expression did not change at all. "Little bitch, how dare you glare at me? Do you know who I am?" The woman was furious. "Enough." Young Master Yao Yu stopped her and looked down at Mu Kaiwei from above. "You do have some character. I know that your King Mu Fort won first place in the Eastern Ocean 100 Sect competition. I also know that there's a martial saint standing behind your King Mu Fort. I also know that this martial saint once killed the patriarch of the spirit ruins Grotto Heaven." He spoke confidently, as if he was familiar with everything. In the eyes of outsiders, these might not be enough to touch you, but to me, it's not enough. Mu Kaiwei's expression finally changed. She did not expect the young man before her to know so much about her. He even dared to order someone to capture her, even though he knew that Yi Chun was here. This meant that the other party had a terrifying background. Young Master Yao Yu saw the change in her expression, and he said with a faint smile, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. I only captured you today to give Xiling an explanation. You only need to kowtow to Xiling and apologize. I'll naturally let you go after that." Young Master Yao Yu stared at Mu Kaiwei. "What do you think?" "Young Master, why don't we forget it?" Wang Xiling braced himself and said, "There's only a misunderstanding between Ms. Mu and me. There's no enmity between us." Just as he was about to say something, he saw young Master Yao Yu's cold smile and immediately shut his mouth, not daring to say another word. Mu Kaiwei smirked coldly. "You want me to kowtow and apologize? What right do you have?" She actually asked me what right do I have? Young Master Yao Yu smiled and looked up at the crowd. Everyone laughed along with him. Little b****, do you really think that you have nothing to fear just because you have a martial saint behind you? The woman who slapped Mu Kaiwei earlier smirked and said, "There's a difference between martial saints too. Trash like the Spirit Ruins Patriarch merely exhausted his potential and forcefully advanced. Ms. Mu, you might not know this, but the Spirit Ruins Patriarch once ignorantly barged into the North Sea's Moon Sect, but he was chased by Shun Man's grandfather for 100,000 kilometers like a stray dog. The black-clothed young man from the West Sea Valley God's Gate said. Shun Man smiled proudly and looked at Mu Kai Wei coldly. Little B asterisk TCH, did you hear what Gu Jinwu said? If you know what's good for you, kneel down now. Otherwise, I'll scratch your face and turn you, the number one beauty, into the number one ugly woman. Even the great Li dynasty's fifth prince could not help but say, Ms. Mu, you'd better do as he says. Even if that Mr. Yi behind you finds out about this, he won't dare to stand up for you. Young Master Yaiwa watched all of this calmly and said, Ms. Mu, what do you think? You'd better kill me. Mu Tsaiwei's gaze was firm. She clenched her fists and said word by word, Once I leave alive, it'll be the end of the sect behind you sooner or later. As soon as she said that, everyone was shocked. A few seconds later, violent killing intent surged. The warm smile on young Master Yayue's face gradually froze. He then put down the wine glass in his hand heavily and said casually, Kill her. Let me do it. Shun Man, the Virgin of the Moon sect, smiled cruelly. Then, she reached out and grabbed Mu Tsaiwei's snow-white neck, lifting her entire body into the air. Little B asterisk TCH, I'm going to scratch your face piece by piece and let you experience what it means to... She laughed jealously. However, at the next moment, she screamed and the right hand that was grabbing Mu Tsaiwei's neck suddenly exploded, turning into a mist of blood. Chapter 1141. My hand! Shun Man fell to the ground, as if she had turned into a female ghost. Her voice was almost hysterical, and blood splattered from her right arm. This sudden scene caused everyone to be startled, after which several elders stood in front of everyone to protect them. Mu Kai Wei stared blankly at the blood on her hand. Then, she suddenly turned around and looked at the entrance of the room. There was a trace of gentleness in her beautiful eyes. Young master, the person who came is no match for you. Be careful. An old man stood in front of young Master Yaoyue and stared fixedly at the entrance. All of you leave. Young Master Yaoyue smiled lightly. I think it's the martial saint behind the King Mu fort. As soon as he said that, everyone's expressions froze, and Wang Xiling's face suddenly turned extremely pale. Since you know of my existence, how dare you touch my people? A voice as cold as the coldest of the east slowly came from outside the door. Wang Xiling's legs went limp, and he almost fell. He could not be more familiar with this voice. Immediately after, a cold young man with fluttering white hair slowly walked in from outside the door. His gaze was extremely cold, like two pieces of ice that would not melt all year round. With his appearance, the temperature in the entire room suddenly dropped. He was dragging a rope in his hand, and there were heads wrapped around the rope. Their eyes were wide open as if they had died with grievances. Everyone in the room gasped when they saw this scene, and then they took a step back in unison. The reason being those heads belonged to the people guarding outside. Each of them was a martial king, but now their heads had been chopped off. Even young Master Yaoyue's expression was cold. He had predicted Yi Chen's existence, but he did not expect Yi Chen to be so brutal. He did not give himself any leeway at all. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Chen glanced around and landed his gaze on Mu Kai Wei. He then extended his left hand gently and said softly, Come. Mu Kai Wei smiled sweetly. Tears gathered in her beautiful eyes as she walked toward Yi Chen slowly. No one dared to stop her. How dare you cut off my arm? How dare you cut off my arm? Do you know who I am? Shun Man, who was on the ground, shrieked and charged at Yi Chen in a frenzy. Her martial king cultivation base exploded. I'll kill you. I must kill you. As the Virgin of the Moon clan, her status was extremely high. Ever since she was young, she had always been the one bullying others. When had she ever been treated like this? Thus, he had already lost his mind. Boom! Yi Chen extended his hand and grabbed her neck. He lifted her up and said coldly, Be asterisk TCH, who gave you the courage to touch my people? My grandfather is the ancestral patriarch of the Moon Clan. How dare you touch me? Shun Man screamed. Yi Chen directly crippled her cultivation base and threw her to the ground. He lifted his head to look at Mu Kai Wei. She slapped you once, so you'll return her 18 slaps. Slap her back. All right. Mu Kai Wei chuckled softly and slapped Shin Man's face. Pa! The slap was loud and clear, and it could be heard as it landed on the ground. Shin Man roared madly with incomparable resentment. Little bitch, how dare you hit me? Pa! Pa! 9 slaps sounded in the room, and Shun Man's originally beautiful face was instantly beaten into a pig's head. The surrounding people watched this scene silently. They felt that their incomparably confident and superior hearts were being overturned. After Mu Kai Wei finished the last slap, she did not even look at Shin Man. She said to Yi Chen directly, I'm done. All right. Yi Chen nodded lightly. His gaze when he looked at Shun Man again was extremely cold. He did not hide the killing intent in his eyes at all. Shun Man's body trembled violently. Clearly, she knew what Yi Chen was going to do. She wet her pants immediately. Don't kill me. You can't kill him. Right at this moment, a cold voice sounded in the room. It was young Master Yaoyue who spoke. He looked straight at Yi Chen calmly. Her grandfather is the patriarch of the North Sea's Moon sect. He was a saint 500 years ago. So what? Yi Chen said. Young Master Yaoyue narrowed his eyes. Mad Southern Yi, I know that you're a martial saint and that you killed the patriarch of the Spirit Ruins. However, what you don't know is that the patriarch of the Spirit Ruins was only a saint 100 years ago. Kacha! Before he could finish, the sound of a joint being crushed rang out in the silent room. Subsequently, Shin Man's throat was crushed, and she fell heavily to the ground. Her eyes were wide open as a soul came out of her body. Just as she was about to escape, Yi Chen grabbed it and burned it with the fire. In an instant, the entire room fell into dead silence. The smile on young Master Yaoyue's face froze. The expression of the black-clothed young man from the West Sea, Gu Yinwu, changed slightly. He subconsciously wanted to escape through the window. Die. However, he was met with Yi Chen's cold gaze. Boom! In an instant, another cloud of blood mist appeared in the room. Yi Chen looked at young Master Yaoyue. A smile appeared on his cold face. So what if I kill him? Young Master Yaoyue said with a cold expression. Nothing much. It's just that you will become the Moon Sect's must-kill target. Anyone related to you will not have a good ending. You seem to be very confident. Yi Chen walked toward the former step by step and said coldly, You can't even protect yourself, and you dare to threaten me? Young Master Yaoyue's expression was calm as he said with a faint smile, It's easy for you to kill me, but I bet that you won't dare to kill me. Do you believe me? Senior Yi. At that moment, Wang Xiling suddenly knelt on the ground and cried, All of this happened because of me. You can kill me, but you really can't kill the young master. Even the 5th prince of the Great Li dynasty stood up and said with a frown, Mr. Yi, I'm the 5th prince of the Great Li dynasty, Shang Tianqing. You can't kill young Master Yaoyue. He actually began to threaten, I advise you not to act recklessly. Otherwise, you won't be able to control the consequences. Why can't I kill him? Yi Chen said with a faint smile. The 5th prince could not help but say with a smile, Young Master Yaoyue is the young master of the South Sea's Supreme One sect. His father is known as the #1 in the Tianfeng Sea area. And? Yi Chen remained expressionless. The 5th prince said with a cold smile, Are you afraid? Most importantly, the 5th prince's mother is the leader of the largest sea clan in the Tianfeng Sea area, the Green Wyrm clan. He shook his head slightly and said, Don't even mention killing him. If you dare to touch a single hair on his head, you'll face the wrath of the Supreme One sect and the Green Wyrm clan. Believe me, you won't be able to bear it. Moreover, your woman isn't dead. She only suffered superficial injuries. He looked at Yi Chen as he said to this point, On the contrary, you should apologize to young Master Yaoyue now. Perhaps you can... Before he was done speaking, he realized that Yi Chen had lifted his head. Not only do I dare to kill him, but I also dare to kill you. P.S. The 4th chapter has been updated for today. I won't ask for votes anymore. I've said what I need to say. The next plot will be very exciting. Thank you for your support. Chapter 1142. Not only do I dare to kill him, but I also dare to kill you." In the wave viewing tower, everyone was silent as they watched Yi Chun behead the fifth prince with one hand. Mu Kaiwei covered her mouth with her hand, feeling extremely bullied. That was the fifth prince of the Dali dynasty. While his status was not as high as that of the crown prince and the others, he was still the son of the emperor of Dali. Now that he was killed by Yi Chun in the capital of Dali dynasty, he did not even need to think to know what kind of earth-shattering turmoil it would cause. The confident smile on young Master Yao Yue's face gradually froze. He could not help but feel a trace of regret. Yes, he dared to kill even the fifth prince of the Dali dynasty. Who else would he not dare to kill? Whoosh! A ball of light shot out from the fifth prince's body. It was his soul trying to escape. However, a tremendous suction force suddenly surged out of Yi Chen's sleeve and sucked the former into his sleeve. After he was done, Yi Chun turned around slowly and glanced at young Master Yao Yue. A mocking smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "Isn't it time to settle the score between us?" Young Master Yao Yu's heart immediately trembled. After that, his complexion turned pale, and he took a step back. He was the son of the Southern Sea Greater One Sect Master. His father was the Greater One Dao Lord, and his mother was the patriarch of the Green Flood Dragon clan, known as the Green Flood Dragon Holy Mother. He thought that with such a background, no matter who dared to touch him, they would have to worry about the people behind him. However, at this moment, he had to admit that he had underestimated Yi Chun. He had underestimated Yi Chen's ruthlessness. He was even lawless and did not care about the consequences. Boom! Almost at that moment, the few martial kings beside him stepped out at the same time. They charged at Yi Chun with crazy expressions on their faces. Boiling primordial energy swept through the world. "Young Master, leave quickly." They were going all out, because once young Master Yao Yu died, they wouldn't survive either. Die! Facing the four martial kings who were fearless of death, the mockery at the corner of Yi Chen's lips did not diminish at all. He spread his divine consciousness that was on the soul formation stage. Bang, 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 bang. Suddenly, four bloody mists exploded in the air. The four martial kings died in an instant. Right after that, he walked towards young Master Yao Yu step by step. "If you kill me, my father will not let you off. He is a 3-revolution martial saint, and is known as the #1 person in the Heavenwind Sea area." At this moment, young Master Yao Yue was no longer as calm as before. As he retreated, his face was filled with fear. "My mother is the Green Flood Dragon clan's clan leader. She is known as the Green Flood Dragon Holy Mother." Before he could finish speaking, Yi Chun grabbed him in his hand. His body collapsed completely, leaving behind a tiny person the size of a palm. That was his divine soul. The little person's face was full of fear, and he screamed, "My father already knows that I'm in danger, and he's on his way." Yi Chen's expression remained unchanged as he exerted force in his hand. However, the little person was not crushed by him. Instead, a purple gleam suddenly shot out of his body. The purple gleam enveloped him tightly, faintly forming an equal with Yi Chun. Bloodline imprint? Surprise flashed through Yi Chen's eyes. Subsequently, he opened his mouth and spat out a golden airflow. The golden airflow directly dispersed the purple glow. "Father, save me, save me." Young Master Yao Yue's divine soul was in complete despair. This was the first time in his life that he had felt powerless, despair, and the aura of death. If he was given another chance, he would definitely not choose to attack Mu Kaiwei. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. The moment the purple gleam was dispersed, a figure suddenly bloomed from young Master Yao Yue's divine soul. It seemed to be an old man, but his facial features were not well defined. He shouted, "Fellow cultivator, let's talk things out. If my son has done anything wrong, I can." Yi Chen acted as if he did not hear him. He closed his palm gently, and young Master Yao Yue's divine soul immediately turned into dust and scattered. At that moment, the blurry figure seemed to have sensed something, and his voice was extremely resentful. "Good, very good. You killed my son. I won't rest until you're dead." At the same time, tens of thousands of kilometers away in the South China Sea, in the prosperous Supreme Sect. An old man in black sat cross-legged on the ground and spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood. His hair was disheveled as he roared, "Yaoyue, my son, I swear that even if I have to die, I will avenge you." With that, he hammered his chest heavily and spat out another mouthful of blood. He grabbed the ball of blood and quickly formed hand seals with both hands. The ball of blood began to squirm violently and rapidly grow larger. In the end, it turned into a scale. On the scale, the face of a beautiful middle-aged woman with two horns on her head could be vaguely seen. Tao Master Tai glared angrily and said with incomparable heartache, "Holy Mother, Yaoer is dead." The location is in the Great Li Dynasty. You can choose how you want to do it. Almost at that instant, in the Central Sea, a giant dragon that was more than 500 meters long stirred up the wind and clouds, crossing the sea for 3,000 kilometers. An earth-shattering roar sounded from the Moon's sect in the North Sea. The patriarch of the Moon's sect left the sect and headed straight for the Great Li Dynasty. The patriarch of the West Sea Valley sect was filled with killing intent. At this moment, the entire Tianfeng Sea area was in a thunderous uproar. Countless people were extremely shocked when they sensed this commotion. The capital of the Great Li Dynasty. In the village that was like a paradise, Grand Tutor Ning suddenly felt a surge of emotion. Then, he quickly pinched his fingers and calculated. His expression kept changing as he sighed faintly. The great calamity is coming, and chaos is coming. In the wave-viewing tower. After Yi Chen's thunderous attack, his expression was still as calm as water. He looked directly at Wang Xiling, who was the only survivor. As if sensing his killing intent, Wang Xiling's body trembled violently, and for a moment, he peed his pants. "Let him go." Mu Kaiwei could not help but say, "This has little to do with him. He even pleaded for me before." What she said was the truth. Although this matter had started because of Wang Xiling, it was not his original intention. In the end, it was young Master Yaoyue who had forcefully stood up for him. As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Xiling looked at her with deep gratitude in his eyes. Yi Chun retracted his gaze and turned around. "Let's go, Senior. Senior Yi." The moment he turned around, Wang Xiling stammered, "Run, run quickly. You've caused great trouble. Tao Master Tai is so powerful that you can't imagine it." However, Yi Chun did not stop. On the 9th floor of the wave-viewing tower, on the highest floor, two figures whose faces could not be seen silently watched everything that had happened before, silently watching the two of them leave. One of the old voices slowly rang out. "This kid has caused a huge disaster this time. Judging from a method he used to kill the patriarch of the spiritual ruins, his strength should be a second-rank martial saint." The response was a clear female voice. The Moonwatch Patriarch, the Valley Patriarch, and the Green Dragon Goddess are all second-rank martial saints. Among them, the Tao Master Tai is a third-rank martial saint. End of this chapter. Chapter 1143. If there's an unfathomable existence like the Emperor of Dali, this brat will definitely die. At this point, the female voice's tone was slightly regretful. On the other hand, that young lady with the surname Mu has a good temperament and talent. What a pity! Outside the wave-viewing tower, Jiao who had been waiting, welcomed Yi Chun and Mu Kaiwei as soon as she saw them. "Young mistress, are you all right? I was so worried." "I'm fine." Mu Kaiwei shook her head lightly. She could not help but ask when she saw Yi Chun turning around to look at the wave-viewing tower without moving, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Yi Chun took a good look at the 9th floor of the wave-viewing tower. His eyes flickered a few times. "Yi Chun, let's not participate in the Emperor's birthday. Let's return to Tianfeng City quickly." "I'm worried." Mu Kaiwei hesitated. Although she did not know much about young Master Yaoyue, she could vaguely guess that his background was terrifying. Not only did Yi Chun kill him, but he also killed the Moon Sect, the Valley God's Gate, and even the 5th Prince. He was probably in big trouble. "It's too late." Yi Chun smiled lightly and looked at the end of the street all of a sudden. Rumble. The entire ground was shaking as if 10,000 horses were galloping. Smoke and dust rose from the end of the street. Under Mu Kaiwei, Jiu and the rest's terrified gazes, they saw an armored army of more than 2,000 people rushing over. Every single one of them was wearing black armor that covered them from head to toe. Even the war horses beneath them were no exception. From afar, they looked like a group of Azuras. Spirit Armor Army. It's the Spirit Armor Army. Mu Tsaiwei's pretty face changed. Rumor had it that the Dali dynasty had a mysterious army that was specially sent by the emperor. Although there were only 2,000 of them, their combat power was comparable to an army of 200,000. Surround this place. A man in black armor looked at Yi Chun and the rest coldly after getting off his horse. Then, he rushed into the wave viewing tower with a few people. Yi Chun, what should we do? Mu Kaiwei leaned against Yi Chun by instinct. By then, she knew that the matter had blown up. Otherwise, the Spirit Armor Army would not have intervened. At this moment, the man in black armor from before walked out with some people. A few people behind him were carrying a stretcher, and the fifth prince's corpse was on the stretcher. The black-armored man pointed at Yi Chun and the rest and shouted, "This person killed the fifth prince. Take them down." Boom! The thousands of spirit armor soldiers in the surroundings took a step forward in unison, and they emanated a baleful aura that caused the ground to tremble violently. Yi Chun's gaze swept across and landed on the black-armored man. "Do you think you can stop me?" "Mr. Yi, I admit that I'm no match for you. We can't stop you either," the black-armored man said fearlessly. "But you don't dare to move either, because before we came here, the Great Li's 500,000-strong army stationed not far from Tianfeng City has already rushed to Tianfeng City." "What did you say?" Mu Kaiwei thought she had heard wrongly. The black-armored man's expression was cold. "As long as you dare to move, I guarantee that Tianfeng City will be destroyed in less than an hour. Even the King Mu Fort will be no exception." Shameless. Mu Tsaiwei's delicate body trembled, and she was extremely anxious. The Great Li had mobilized 500,000 troops. If they were fully equipped and had a martial king to hold the fort, the King Mu Fort would not be able to withstand it. "Are you threatening me?" Yi Chun looked at him quietly. At the next moment, with a step forward, the 500 spirit armor soldiers in the south turned into a bloody mist. They did not even have the chance to scream. "Do you know that what I hate the most is being threatened?" He took another step forward, and the 500 spirit armor soldiers in the north turned into a bloody mist. The black-armored man's expression changed drastically. "If you want to destroy Tianfeng City and the King Mu Fort, go ahead. I won't stop you." Yi Chun took another step forward, and another 500 spirit armor soldiers died. "At most, I'll slaughter the Great Li after this and wipe out all your families." In the last step, the remaining 500 spirit armor soldiers died. The black-armored man's body was torn into pieces, turning into countless bloody mists that scattered everywhere. "Yi Chun, let's go back now." Mu Kaiwei was almost begging. "It's too late." Yi Chun shook his head lightly. "Even if we set off now, it'll take us half a day to reach Tianfeng City. By the time we get there, I'm afraid we'll already be, then my father." Mu Tsaiwei's face was extremely pale. "You still don't understand?" Yi Chun chuckled. This was a trap from the beginning. It was a trap that used the Emperor's birth as an excuse to trap us in it. "We can't take care of ourselves. What should we do next?" Mu Kaiwei said helplessly. "Kill to break the trap." Yi Chun spat out a few words softly. Then, he waved his sleeve and carried the two women to the south of the capital. Almost at that moment, the tragedy at the wave viewing tower was spread. It instantly shook the world and shocked the world. The saintess of the moon sect, Shun Man, was dead. The young master of the valley goddess sect, Gu Yuan Wu, was dead. The young master of the supreme E sect, young master Yao Yue, was dead. The fifth prince, Shang Tiansheng, was dead. The spirit armor army was mobilized, but they were completely wiped out. When this news that was filled with endless blood spread to every corner of the capital, all the forces were shocked. One had to know that whether it was the Moon sect, the Valley Goddess sect, or the Supreme One sect, they were all overlords. Their foundations were not weaker than the Dali dynasty at all. Now, All the overlords had been killed? In an instant, various forces sent people to investigate the real situation in the wave viewing tower. In the end, they came to a conclusion. The killer, Mad Southern Yi. Half a month ago, perhaps everyone would have been confused and did not know who it was. However, this name had already shaken the entire East Sea and even the Tianfeng Sea area. Mad Southern Yi killed the Spirit Ruins patriarch of the Spirit Ruins Grotto Heaven by himself. His divinity even made the Nine-Yang Sword leader and the Grand Purity Palace master admit defeat. Previously, Yichen had been in the limelight because the Spirit Ruins Grotto Heaven was destroyed overnight and the Nine-Yang Sword leader and the Grand Purity Palace master had mysteriously disappeared. Now that this news spread, everyone's scalps went numb and a thought flashed through their minds. Is Mad Southern Yi crazy? He killed the people of the overlords without caring about the consequences. Was he really not afraid of revenge? Did he really think that he was invincible? Just as everyone was waiting for the overlords to react, an even more explosive news spread. The Supreme One's sect master, the Supreme One, broke out of closed-door cultivation and rushed toward the Dali dynasty alone. His killing intent shook the heavens. The Moon Sect's patriarch, the Moon Patriarch, and the Valley Goddess Sect's patriarch, the Valley Goddess Sect's patriarch, came one after another, demanding an explanation from the Dali dynasty. The Green Dragon clan's patriarch, the Green Dragon Holy Mother, unleashed a tsunami that hit the land for 3,000 kilometers, threatening to avenge young Master Yaiwei. If you like Evil Dad in the City, please collect Evil Dad in the City. Chapter 1144. Countless people were horrified by this. Whether it was the Supreme Dao Lord or the Wanhua Patriarch, they were the top figures in the Tianfeng Sea area. Their names and deeds were sung by countless people. Now that the few of them had made a move, it was obvious that this matter could not be resolved peacefully. Everyone knew what kind of storm would be stirred up next. At this moment, an imperial edict came from the Dali Imperial Palace. Mad Southern Yi is tyrannical. He killed a member of the royal family and deserves death. From today onwards, the Dali dynasty and Mad Southern Yi are irreconcilable. The last imperial edict of the Dali dynasty once again ignited the shock in everyone's hearts. It meant that the 5 great forces had joined forces to kill Mad Southern Yi. This had never happened in the history of the Tianfeng Sea area. However, just when everyone was trying to find Yi Chun, they realized that he had suddenly vanished in a thin air. In the Dali Imperial City, the Emperor of Dali, Shang Wudao, sat on the dragon throne and looked down at the crowd below with a gloomy gaze. You still haven't found him? All the officials below were silent, and all of them were trembling with fear and terrified to the extreme. At this moment, an old man in black took a step forward and said, Your Majesty, before this, we sealed the city gates and even activated the Tsang Dragon formation. There's no way that Yi can escape. The person behind him also had a doubtful expression. Once the Tsang Dragon formation was activated, even a martial saint would find it difficult to escape in a short period of time. However, there was nothing unusual about the Tsang Dragon formation. How did that person disappear? The Emperor's eyes flickered nonstop. He had planned for this day for a long time, and he felt that there were no mistakes. However, at this moment, he felt a faint sense of unease. At this moment, a person hurriedly walked in and knelt on one knee. Your Majesty, bad news. Mad Southern Yi has appeared in the Azure Dragon Mine. The moment that was said, the entire place was in an uproar. What? He's actually in the Azure Dragon Mine? There's no exit in the Azure Dragon Mine. What's he doing there? The person said again, Mad Southern Yi killed his way into the mine and used a strange divinity. He actually forcefully devoured the mine. Boom. The Emperor of Dali was shocked. His brows were filled with rage, and then his body disappeared on the spot. He finally knew where his uneasiness came from. When the capital of the Dali dynasty was built, there were great figures who spent a lot of effort to use their magic to move 4 mines to suppress the dragon veins. They were the Green Dragon Mine, the Red Bird Mine, the Black Tortoise Mine, and the White Tiger Mine. It could be said that the 4 mines were related to a country's luck. Now that Yi Chun had appeared in the mines, and could devour the mind by force. It was equivalent to destroying the country's luck. How could he not be shocked? In the Azure Dragon mine, spiritual energy surged. The ground was stained with blood, and corpses were piled up like mountains. A ferocious-looking giant beast, over 100 feet in size, stood in the void. It was a ferocious-looking golden ape with golden fur all over its body and 4 thick limbs. The giant ape opened its mouth and breathed towards the huge mine down below. Inexhaustible natural energies surged towards the golden ape from mine. It could be seen that the spirit stones in the mine were rapidly darkening at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then turning into powder. On the ground far away, Mukaiwei and Jiu widened their eyes as they watched this scene in disbelief. The reason being Yi Chun had turned into a giant ape with a murderous aura in their eyes earlier. It was as if he had transformed into a primordial, ferocious beast. Boom! After the last trace of spiritual energy was devoured by the giant ape, the entire Azure Dragon mine collapsed. With a flash of light, the giant ape's body began to sway. Subsequently, it turned into a skinny figure that was less than 8 feet tall, revealing Yi Chen's face. This 9 true spirit transformations is indeed extraordinary. A hint of joy flowed through Yi Chen's eyes as he sensed the surging spiritual energy in his body. The so-called 9 true spirit transformations was a demonic cultivation method that he had obtained from the immortal world. It could transform one's body into 9 types of true spirits and obtain the power of the true spirits. As for the true spirits, they were existences among the primordial ferocious beasts. They were the sky-devouring centipede, the dragon chimera, the primordial demon ape, the sea-splitting mysterious dragon whale, the scarlet flame golden swanee, the taotai, the qiangqi, and the kuin peng. Among them, the primordial demon ape was the most famous for its ferocity in battle. It was extremely powerful and loved devouring the spiritual energy in the world. Yi Chen knew very well that when he descended to the ancient desolate realm, he did not have much spiritual energy left. Although he recovered in the northern region later on, he had only recovered to beginner stage nascent soul. Through the battle with the Patriarch of Spirit Ruins, he knew that with his current cultivation base, it might not be enough to fight a few martial saints at the same time. Therefore, he targeted the mine of the Great Li dynasty. He used the 9 true spirit transformations and transformed into the primordial demon ape. He used the power of the demon ape to quickly devour the mine and replenish his spiritual energy. Just one mine had allowed him to reach mid-stage nascent soul. Emperor of Great Li, since you've schemed against me, I'll end your country's fortune today. A cold gleam flashed through Yi Chen's eyes as he thought to this point. He then waved his sleeve and ran toward another vermilion bird mine with Mukaiwei and Mukaiwei. He was not a fool. Through everything in the wave viewing tower, he could tell that this was just a trap set up by the Emperor of Great Li. He wanted to make him infuriate the masses and then be attacked by them. He would devour all 4 mines today. At that time, he wanted to see who in the Tianfeng Sea area could fight against him. Not long after he left, a figure in a dragon robe appeared. It was none other than the Emperor of Great Li. The former looked at the ruins of the Azure Dragon mine with a gloomy gaze. His face twitched as he chased after the aura. Half an hour later, at the Vermilion Bird mine, Yi Chun devoured all the spiritual energy that was like a river. Meanwhile, his spiritual energy cultivation base had increased from mid-stage nascent soul to late-stage nascent soul. The primordial demon ape that he transformed into became more and more lifelike, as if the primordial demon ape had really descended. I wonder if devouring the remaining 2 spirit stone mines will allow me to step into soul formation. Yi Chun transformed into his human form. He clenched his fists lightly and allowed the true origin energy in his body to surge like a tide. His eyes shone brightly. I have to say, Great Li is really rich. At that moment, a torrent of killing intent suddenly swept over from the void. At the next moment, a figure in a dragon robe slowly appeared. It was the Emperor of Great Li, Shang Wudao, who had chased after him. Shang Wudao swept his gaze around. When he saw the vermilion bird mine that had also turned into ruins, His expression turned grim. "Mad Southerny, I'll definitely kill you." The two minds were gone. This was equivalent to draining half of Great Lee's fortune. How could he not feel heartache and madness? Emperor of Great Lee. Yichen swept his gaze over and looked into his eyes. "Do you think you have everything planned? Do you think you can toy with me? I'll definitely kill you." The Emperor of Great Lee was so angry that he laughed. He enunciated word by word. "Today, no matter if you go to heaven or hell, you won't be able to escape death." Chapter 1145. In the abandoned Vermilion Bird Mine, not long after the enraged Emperor of Dali appeared, the wind and clouds above the capital of Dali suddenly changed color, and then they began to tremble violently. The commotion was as if the sky was about to collapse, shaking the world. Immediately after, a cold shout resounded through the air. "Shan Wu Dao, I'll give you 10 breaths of time. If you don't open this Tsang Dragon formation, I'll destroy your capital today." This cold shout was like thunder, completely shaking the capital of Dali Kingdom. At that moment, whether it was mortals or cultivators, they all heard the sound of thunder in their ears. Killing intent, intense killing intent, madness, extreme madness. Under this invisible might, many cultivators died on the spot. Those who were lucky enough to survive were also severely injured. Someone spat blood and said with a shocked expression, "Grand Taoist Lord, it's the Grand Taoist Lord of the South Sea sect. He must be here to avenge his son. Is this the terror of the #1 person in the Tianfeng Sea area? Just his voice alone is invincible." At this moment, countless people's hearts trembled. "Si Xing, that old man is finally here." Faced with such a situation, the Emperor of Dali, who was originally furious, was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. "Mad Southern Yi, I told you that you'll definitely die today." He glanced at Yi Chen coldly. Then, he took a step forward and left. After he left, Mu Kaiwei heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Yi Chen in shock and said, "Yi Chen, that voice earlier was, if I'm not wrong, that person is the Grand Taoist Lord of the Grand East Sect." Yi Chen lifted his head to look at the sky, his eyes flickering. "What?" Mu Kaiwei's body swayed when she heard that. Deep fear surged in her beautiful eyes. Grand Taoist Lord. Although she was from the East Sea, she had heard of the Grand Taoist Lord's name. To her, such an existence was no different from a god. And now, such an existence had really come. Thinking to this point, she seemed to have thought of something, and her pretty face suddenly turned extremely pale. "He's here to avenge Master Yaoyue. Yi Chen, why you should leave now?" Her voice was trembling as she said, "Don't worry about us. Go. You're no match for the Emperor of Dali and the Tai Taoist Lord working together." Son-in-law, Jiu also panicked. Yi Chen's expression remained the same. He shook his head lightly and said something that almost made the two ladies break down. "I'm afraid it's not 2, but 5. The south gate of the capital of Dali Kingdom. Fellow Taoist Tai Yi, I'll remove the Tsang Dragon formation now." The Emperor of the Dali dynasty, who was ascending, spoke slowly. A golden jade seal shot out from his sleeve, releasing 9 streams of dragon chi that swept in all directions. Boom! The heavenly dragon formation that enveloped the entire capital immediately disappeared, which meant that outsiders could easily enter the capital. Buzz, as the void trembled violently, everyone saw a figure step out of the distorted space. It was a black-clothed old man. His face was cold, and his eyes were filled with a destructive aura. The very moment he appeared, the world seemed to have darkened, and an invisible pressure shrouded the entire capital of the Dali dynasty. At that moment, countless people could not help but kneel down, their faces filled with shock. The Tai sect, the Tai Taoist Lord. He's stronger than the Patriarch of Spirit Ruins. Yi Chen looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes. From that figure, he could sense an aura that was more than 2 times stronger than the Patriarch of Spirit Ruins. Fellow C. The Emperor of Dali stood in the air as the dragon chi on his body surged. He looked at him and said, "This is my country. Please retract your pressure." Shang Wudao, I respect you, so I sent my son, Yao Yu, to congratulate you on your birthday. Now, he's dead in your territory. Dao Master Tai Yi snorted coldly, and the pressure on his body increased by more than several times. His eyes were filled with cold light. If you don't give me an explanation today, I'll kill you too. As soon as he said that, the entire capital of Dali Kingdom fell silent. Everyone who was watching this scene was trembling in fear. The Emperor of Dali's gaze darkened. Just as he was about to speak, the originally bright sky suddenly darkened. Boom, boom, boom. Outside the city, the sound of water surging over could be heard. The commotion was like a tsunami. There's a flood. Help! One could faintly hear the screams, wails, and cries of pain. In front of everyone's eyes, the entire Dali Kingdom was surrounded by waves that were dozens of feet high. Countless cities and trees were all swept up by the rolling waves. Roar! With a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar, a huge dragon that was more than 60 meters long soared into the sky from the waves. It was a green dragon. It swayed its huge body and looked down at the Emperor of Dali with a pair of sharp eyes. A cold female voice came from its mouth. Shang Wudao, if you don't hand over the beast today, I'll flood the capital of Dali Kingdom and let Dali Kingdom die with my son. Green Dragon Holy Mother. The Emperor of Dali recognized it immediately. Shang Wudao, the Virgin of the Moon Clan, Shun Man, died in the capital of the Dali Kingdom. You must give me an explanation today. An old man wearing a grayish-white robe slowly walked out from behind Taoist, Master Taoist. There's also the young master of the Valley Goddess sect. Following the distortion of space, a black-faced elder appeared. At the same time, his furious voice exploded in the low and deep sky. The ancestral patriarch of the Moon Clan, the ancestral patriarch of the Valley God sect, the giants from the North Ocean and the West Ocean are here too. Gasps abruptly rang out from the ground as everyone watched this scene in shock. The Grand One Supremacy of the South Sea, the Full Moon Patriarch of the North Sea, the Divine Valley Patriarch of the West Sea, the Patriarch of the Green Dragon race of the Central Sea, the Green Dragon Holy Mother. These existences that stood at the pinnacle of the entire Heaven-Wind Sea region were rarely seen for hundreds or even thousands of years. Who would have thought that all of them would appear together today? The heavens were about to be overturned. The same thought flashed through everyone's mind. Many people of the Dali dynasty gradually felt their hearts sink. Now that the four supergiants had all arrived, if they fought, Dali Kingdom would be defenseless. In this deathly, silent atmosphere, the Emperor of Dali smiled faintly. Everyone, I can understand your pain. In fact, my son, Tianqing, also died in the hands of that person. Speaking of this, his eyes were filled with violence. 2 mines of Dali Kingdom were also destroyed by him. Cut the crap. Where's he? Taoist, Master Taoist, erupted with endless murderous intent. End of this chapter. Chapter 1146. This person is currently in the Vermilion Burr Mine. Everyone, follow me. The Emperor of Dali Dynasty did not hesitate. After saying that, his body shook and he disappeared on the spot. Split up. We can't let this person escape. The Patriarch of Wang Yue's gaze was grim as he followed the Emperor of Dali from the east. The Grand Taoist Venerate, the Green Dragon Goddess, and the Patriarch of Valley God ran from the west, south, and north. At the Vermilion Bird Mine, Mu Kaiwei fell to the ground. Her beautiful face was pale as she mumbled, Yichun, I'm sorry. I've caused you harm. I've caused you harm. She had also heard the conversation between the Emperor of Dali, the Grand Taoist Venerate, and the rest. 5 martial saints. 5 martial saints wanted to kill Yichun, and all of this was because of her. If Yichun had not gone to the Guanlan Tower to save her, he would not have killed the Holy Lady of the Moon sect, Shun Man, the young master of the Valley God sect, Gu Yuwu, and young master Yaiyue. She had caused great trouble for Yichun. Jiu'er cried as well, Young mistress, this has nothing to do with you. It's my own choice. Yichun looked calm as he waited quietly for the arrival of the 5 of them. The true origin energy in his body surged like a tsunami. although it was all because of Mu Kai Wei. However, he did not regret it. That was because he had achieved his goal of coming to the capital of Dali. He knew the identities of Qianqian and the rest, and he also knew that Su Yuhan and the rest were in Zhongzhou. Moreover, the culprit of this matter was the Emperor of Dali. Ever since he was still in Tianfeng City, the Emperor of Dali had already set up a trap. Even though he knew that it was a trap, he still plunged in without hesitation. He did not care about any schemes or tricks. He only believed that he could break through everything with his strength. Jiao could not help but cry. Her eyes were red. "Young master, let's escape. Let's escape to a place where they can't find us." Escape? Where can we escape to? Even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, I will avenge my son. At that moment, a cold voice exploded in the air. Then, 5 silhouettes appeared in the void. They were the Tai Taoist Lord, the Emperor of Dali, the Green Dragon Goddess, the Wangyue Ancestor, and the Goddess of Grains. As soon as the 5 of them appeared, they joined hands to seal off the space within a radius of 100,000 feet. Their intense killing intent and pressure almost materialized. Mu Kai Wei and Jiao immediately vomited blood. Even so, Mu Kai Wei still hugged the cute little baby in her arms tightly. Under that pressure, a golden light erupted from the little fellow's chest, silently dispelling the pressure. Yichen landed on the ground and stood before the 2 ladies. He waved his sleeve and dispersed the pressure. "It really is you." Dao Master Tai glared at Yichen and said with a cold smile, "Do you still remember what I said to you after you killed my son? This seat won't rest until you're dead. Countless people have died in my hands. Everyone wants to fight me to the death." Yi Zichen said. Yichen looked at him without changing his expression, "But they're the ones who died in the end. How arrogant." The Green Dragon Goddess's eyes were filled with resentment. "How dare you kill my son? I swear that I'll extract the souls of everyone related to you and refine them so that they'll live in pain forever." Mad Southern Yi, did you expect this day to come? The Emperor of Dali had a mocking expression. "You're able to kill the spiritual ruins patriarch at such a young age. It's obvious that you have extraordinary talent. Unfortunately, you're destined to die here today. Why are you talking so much to him? Either he dies today, or I die." The Goddess of Grains' ancestor's expression was ferocious. He grabbed out with his palm after saying that. It turned into a majestic pillar of light that looked like a human-shaped hand that charged at Yichen. "Step back." Yichen's expression remained the same. He waved his sleeve and sent Mu Kai Wei and Jiao flying. "Yichen, no," Mu Kai Wei said heartbreakingly. "Break." Right at that moment, a huge ancient seal word suddenly appeared in the air. As soon as the word was formed, it turned into terrifying runes. Rumble, the majestic pillar of light, immediately exploded amidst the terrifying runes, and the energy spread out like a shockwave. "Who is it?" The Goddess of Grains' patriarch's expression changed slightly. Even Taoist, Master Tai, Yi, and the rest were no exception. Only the Emperor of Dali's expression changed slightly. He turned around with a gloomy gaze. Under his gaze, a middle-aged scholar in a green robe slowly walked out. Grand Tutor Ning, Taoist, Master Tai, Yi, and the rest focused their gazes. The Emperor of Dali's expression was extremely grim as he said coldly, "Grand Tutor, are you determined to become my enemy?" What he did not want to see the most had happened. Under everyone's gaze, Grand Tutor Ning walked over slowly. There was no cultivation fluctuation on his body, but he seemed to have overlapped with the great Tao of heaven and earth. Even Yichen was extremely surprised. He did not expect Grand Tutor Ning to stand out at this time. Facing the Emperor of Dali's gloomy gaze, Grand Tutor Ning stopped and looked at him. A few seconds later, he sighed faintly. "Wu Dao, do you still remember what you promised me 1,000 years ago?" The Emperor of Dali's name was Shang Wu Dao. In the entire Dali dynasty, only Grand Tutor Ning could call him by his name. "Back then, you and I met in Zhongzhou," Grand Tutor Ning muttered to himself. "At that time, you were heroic and talented. You were determined to create a prosperous era for the people of the world, and I joined you because of that." That's how it has been 1,000 years. Shang Wu Dao was gloomy and silent. In these 1,000 years, I've witnessed Dali grow from a small dynasty that swallowed humiliation to an existence that suppressed the Tianfengxi area. Grand Tutor Ning seemed to sigh. I've also witnessed your ambition growing day by day. You've become selfish, violent, suspicious, greedy, and insatiable. You've become a flatterer and have long forgotten your original intentions. Shut up. As he spoke, Shang Wudao's face was flushed red. He seemed to be exasperated as he said, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to become my enemy because of an outsider? I'll also ask you one last time. Grand Tutor Ning stared at him. Today, as long as you withdraw, I'll still be your subject, and Dali will still be your Dali. Ha ha. What nice still my subject. Shang Wudao suddenly laughed out loud. Ning Haoran, how dare you threaten me? Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Forget it. Grand Tutor Ning sighed softly and turned around to look at Yi Chun. Give me the fifth prince's soul. At that moment, Shang Wudao's expression changed slightly. Yi Chun nodded lightly and waved his sleeve. A soul shot toward the former immediately. After Grand Tutor Ning caught it, he looked at the fifth prince's soul that was about to dissipate and said benevolently, Child, who sent you to Wave-Watching Tower? Tell me everything. His voice was like the voice of the great Tao, giving off a sense of familiarity. One would choose to believe everything without any precaution. The fifth prince's soul was not on guard at all. He said blankly, Father secretly ordered me to go to Wave-Watching Tower. End of this chapter. Chapter 1147. Bulsh *T. Shang Wudao immediately cursed. On the other hand, Dao Master Tai and the rest frowned slightly. Surprisingly, they did not choose to stop him. The fifth prince's soul continued. Father asked me to invite young Master Yaoyue, Saintess Shun Man, and the young master of the sect of grains to eat at the Wave-Watching Tower. He also ordered me to invite young Master Wang Xiling of the Heavenly Sword sect. Be ****, I'll kill you. Shang Wudao's expression was slightly ferocious. Then, he actually reached out with his hand, as if he wanted to snatch the fifth prince's soul from Grand Tutor Ning's hands. Boom! At this moment, the Moon Sect's patriarch, who had been silent all this while, suddenly stopped him and said coldly, Fellow Shang, why are you so agitated? Let him continue. The eyes of the three of them flickered nonstop. Everyone present had lived for more than 1,000 years, so they were able to detect the abnormality from just a single detail. At the banquet, young Master Yaoyue and the rest did not know about the conflict between young Master Wang, Xiling, and Mad Southern Yi. I was the one who brought it up on my father's behalf. As expected, after young Master Yaoyue found out about the small conflict between Wang Xiling and Mad Southern Yi, I deliberately brag about Mad Southern Yi's achievements to provoke young Master Yaoyue. As he spoke, Dao, a Master Tai, and the rest looked at Shang Wudao, their eyes filled with sharpness. Fellow Shang, is that true? The Green Dragon Goddess's gaze was unfriendly. Initially, they thought that Yi Chun had killed their people. Never had they thought that there would be such a scheme and conspiracy. If what the fifth prince said was true, then it must be Shang Wudao who caused this outcome today. Yi Chun nodded secretly. A hint of admiration flashed through his eyes as he looked at Grand Tutor Ning. It had to be said that it was no wonder that Grand Tutor Ning was an existence that had become a saint through literature. He possessed great wisdom and could easily see through this situation. Fellow cultivators, don't listen to this unfilial son's excuse. This has nothing to do with me. Shang Wudao's expression was extremely calm as he sneered. Have you ever wondered why Yi killed young Master Yaoyue and the rest, but left behind the unfilial son's soul? The eyes of Dao Master Tai and the rest immediately flickered when they heard that. In my opinion, you must have done something to the unfilial son's soul. Shang Wudao saw all of this and said again, Everyone, all of you are extraordinary, so you should know that it's not difficult to implant a memory into a person's divine soul, right? No matter what, it's a fact that ye killed my son, a fact that can't be changed. The Green Dragon Holy Mother smiled coldly. I don't care if there is any conspiracy. I only know that if you owe money, you must pay. You must pay with your life. Then come. Yi Chen took a deep breath in as the golden flames in his eyes danced nonstop. I'd like to experience your techniques today. As soon as these words came out, the temperature of the world suddenly dropped. Attack! Tai, Daoist master, was the first to speak. A sage Dharma idol immediately condensed behind him, causing the void to tremble. Wait! At that moment, a slightly pleading voice came from behind Yi Chen. Then, he saw Mu Kaiwei walking over quickly while carrying Meng Meng and Jia. What are you doing here? Yi Chen frowned. Mu Kaiwei smiled sadly when she saw Yi Chen's displeased expression. She then put down Meng Meng and knelt heavily before Tai, Daoist master, and the rest. Seniors, a sad smile appeared on her pale face. My name is Mu Kaiwei. All of this happened because of me. It has nothing to do with Yi Chen, whether it's the holy maiden Shen Man, young Master Gu, or young Master Yaoyue. They all died because of me. Today, Kaiwei is willing to atone for her sins. Kaiwei is willing to use her life to pay for young Master Yaoyue and the rest. After saying that, she bit her lips, and a hint of determination flashed across her beautiful face. Then, she raised her hand and slapped her head heavily. Young mistress, Jiawer cried. Bang! Just as her hand was about to hit her head, she realized that she could not move, as if she was imprisoned. The former opened her eyes and looked at Yi Chen pleadingly. Yi Chen, and no, she had let Yi Chen down. She did not want to implicate Yi Chen. Yi Chen said calmly when he met her gaze, I'll take responsibility for what I've done. Why would I need a woman to die for me? Everyone, there's a perpetrator for every injustice, and there's a debtor for every debt. I killed all of your loved ones. Come, let's see if you'll die today. At this point, he waved his sleeve and sent Mu Kaiwei and the other two flying. Take care of my daughter. Yi Chen, don't. Mu Kaiwei screamed at the top of her lungs. Let's fight. Yi Chen was unmoved. He took a step forward, and a dazzling divine glow suddenly surged around him. His body suddenly expanded. Crackle, crackle. Under everyone's shocked gazes, his body expanded and changed. In the end, he turned into a giant golden ape that soared into the sky. The giant golden ape was incomparably tall, and its entire body was burning with flames. It was like a primordial, ferocious beast that had descended into the world. It was filled with an extremely monstrous, fiendish aura, as if it wanted to tear this world apart with its arms. 9 transformations of the true spirit, the manifestation of the primordial demon ape. What divinity is this? At this moment, the pupils of Tao Master Tai Yi and the rest constricted, and their eyes were filled with fear. Roar! An earth-shaking roar came from Yi Chen, who had transformed into the primordial demon ape. The common people are in chaos. The world is on fire. I'm the only one in the world. I don't care what divinity he has. With the 5 of us attacking, we'll kill gods and Buddhas below the Emperor's stage. The Emperor of Dali, Shang Wudao, shouted. The dragon energy in his body surged, and a golden dragon energy turned into a golden spear that shot out. Kill! Tao Master Tai, he took out a huge cauldron. It seemed like he wanted to absorb the void into it. It descended from the sky and covered Yi Chen directly. Yao, if you're still alive, open your eyes and watch. I'll avenge you today. The green dragon goddess roared and revealed her true form of a dragon that was 60 meters long. Her claws tore through the air and grabbed at Yi Chen. Full moon finger. The patriarch of the moon sect formed a giant handprint in the air. It turned into a giant finger that covered Yi Chen. Rumble. The 4 martial saints attacked with all their might, and the power that erupted almost caused the world to tremble. The battle erupted just like that. At that moment, countless people outside were watching the scene in shock. They could already see Yi Chen's tragic end. For martial saints attacked, Yi Chen could not escape. Just as the remaining patriarch of the Valley God sect was about to join the battle, he suddenly felt Grand Tutor Ning's calm gaze. The patriarch's expression changed slightly as he said threateningly, Grand Tutor Ning? Do you really want to go against us? Buzz, as the void trembled, a golden scripture appeared in Grand Tutor Ning's hand. The scripture shone with golden light, as if golden words were spreading out. End of this chapter. Chapter 1148. The Book of Great Path. You took out the Book of Great Path. Are you crazy? Looking at the golden book in Grand Tutor Ning's hand, Ancestor Goddess of Grains was in disbelief. The Book of Great Path was the manifestation of a scholar who became a saint. Scholars did not cultivate martial techniques, nor did they cultivate their physical bodies. They cultivated their scholarly chi in heaven and earth. The Book of Great Path contained their own understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, the Book of Great Path was extremely precious. It was even more important than one's life. However, Grand Tutor Ning still managed to cultivate it. Grand Tutor. At this moment, many people who were watching the battle from the outside were moved, especially the students who cultivated the way of literature. It could be said that all the scholars in the entire Dali dynasty were the disciples of the Grand Tutor. They could disrespect the Emperor of Dali, but they had to regard Grand Tutor Ning as a saint. Seeing that the Grand Tutor was going to intervene in this unprecedented battle, many of the students could not help but feel nervous. I don't care if I'm crazy or not. I'll just do what I should. At this moment, Grand Tutor Ning was surrounded by a thick scholarly chi. The golden book in his hand hung above his head, emitting a light that was 10 times more blinding than the sun. As the saying goes, when a scholar meets a soldier, he can't be reasoned with. Since you want to die, don't blame me. Today, I'd like to see how powerful you, the number 1 saint in the Tianfeng Sea, are. The patriarch of the goddess of grains roared. In the next moment, his hand broke through the void and punched towards Grand Tutor Ning. Hangwu Common Life Fist. Under this punch, the wind from the punch was like a raging torrent that swept in all directions. It contained the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. The skinny Grand Tutor Ning was like a grain of sand in the ocean under such an attack, unable to withstand the storm. However, at that moment, the golden book that had been hanging above Grand Tutor Ning's head suddenly flipped open. Buzz, as the void trembled, a majestic righteousness of heaven and earth radiated from the golden book, covering a radius of 1,000 feet. Kaboom! In the face of such righteousness, the attack from the Patriarch of Grains collapsed abruptly and turned into violent energy that dissipated into the air. Great! The Grand Tutor is invincible. As expected of the Grand Tutor, such righteousness can be said to be the best in our great Li. Many scholars of the Dali dynasty, who have been watching the battle between the two of them, cheered when they saw this scene. I once heard that in the Central Plains, the Tao of literature is flourishing. There are highly learned Confucians who can kill demons who cultivate evil arts with just a shout. In the past, I thought that it was just a rumor. I never thought that it was actually true. Grand Preceptor Ning is one of the 3 dukes of the great Li dynasty. He gathered the fortune of all the scholars in the world, and he once relied on a piece of calligraphy to suppress a sea clan for 1,000 years. On the other hand, the faces of the others were filled with astonishment. Obviously, they'd never imagined that an extremely weak scholar would actually be so terrifying. Roar! A deafening roar shook the 9 heavens. The primordial demon ape that Yi Chun had transformed into was completely golden. His body expanded to more than 15 meters, and his ferocious might was monstrous. If you want to kill me, all of you will die today. Boom, boom, boom. He took a step forward and dived forward, taking the initiative to attack the 4 martial sages who had joined hands to attack him. As he swung his fists, his thick arms were like 2 true dragons, scattering all the clouds in the sky. Golden flames bloomed all over his body, and it was as if the stars in the universe were smashing down from the sky. It was extremely dazzling, and no one could look at it directly. You deserve to die for killing my son. His black clothes fluttered, and his black hair danced wildly. He formed a powerful seal with his hand. In the blink of an eye, a Dharma idol that looked like an ancient god appeared behind him. The projection was dignified, and its aura was monstrous. It was like a god that had descended from the heavens. Thud! At that moment, heaven and earth shook, and heavy rain poured down. It was as if countless ferocious beasts were roaring in the air. The onlookers were all terrified. Was this the might of a saint? As Tai Daoist master formed the seal, the gigantic projection behind him overlapped its hands. Then, it transformed into a gigantic Qilin shadow that roared at Yichun. The gigantic Qilin shadow was covered in purple energy. It was more than 30 meters long, and it was like a giant star smashing down. Its might was monstrous. Roar! Yichun shouted. Instead of retreating, he advanced. He took the initiative to charge at the purple Qilin shadow while moving his enormous primordial demon ape body. He felt like he had endless strength in his body. It was as if a primordial ferocious beast had descended to the mortal world. In the blink of an eye, he met the Qilin shadow. Then he raised his fist and charged. Break! Boom! Endless golden light erupted from his fist. The sky lost its color, and the ground trembled and rumbled. The people who were watching this scene from afar were all shocked. Under such power, if they were to rush forward, their bodies would probably be shattered in an instant. Even their souls would be destroyed. Rumble, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the gigantic Qilin shadow collapsed with a loud bang and turned into purple gas. Even Tai Daoist Master was an exception. However, he did not think that he could severely injure Yichun with a single attack. Otherwise, the Patriarch of Spiritual Ruins would not have died. Mad Southern Yi Dai. In the blink of an eye, the Wangyue Patriarch teleported from 300 meters away. A purple medicinal cauldron expanded out of thin air and shot toward Yichun's head. In an instant, the weather changed. Countless bolts of lightning appeared in the depths of the void and gathered in the huge medicinal cauldron. This is the Thunder Accumulation Cauldron of the Wangyu sect. A powerhouse who was watching sucked in a breath of cold air and introduced. Rumor has it that the founder of the Wangyu sect once traveled in the dark and saw a purple cauldron being nurtured in the thunderclouds. The purple cauldron can gather all lightning. I didn't expect the old bastard Wangyue to bring this treasure out. Looks like he wants to kill ye. The Emperor of Dali's expression was solemn. I want you to be struck by lightning. The Wangyue Patriarch formed hand seals with both hands. Suddenly, tens of thousands of lightning rumbled within the purple cauldron in the void. Then, it turned into a gigantic pillar of lightning that struck at Yichun with an unparalleled might. The lightning descended, and the might of the heavens was terrifying. Under such might, even Tai Daoist Master, the Green Dragon Goddess, and the Emperor of Dali had to retreat. Destroy me with lightning? Yichun seemed to be mocking. Not to mention that his physical body was not afraid of the might of lightning. The primordial demon ape that he had transformed into had swallowed countless bolts of lightning since it was born. Now that the Wangyue Patriarch had taken out the lightning-containing cauldron and wanted to kill him with the help of the lightning, it was no different from showing off in front of an expert. Then, under everyone's gaze, Yichun stomped his feet. The giant ape raised the sky and opened its ferocious mouth to suck hard. The gigantic pillar of lightning that made one's heart tremble was directly swallowed into its mouth and did not move at all. What? Everyone was so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The flawless chapter of The Genius Nanny in the City will continue to be updated on the mobile game bar. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend the mobile game bar. If you like Evil Dad in the City, please collect Evil Dad in the City. Chapter 1149. How is this possible? Everyone who witnessed this scene was stunned, and their eyes revealed an expression as if they had seen a ghost. They could not figure out why this would be the outcome. They could not figure out why Yichun could devour lightning. This is impossible. The Wangyue Patriarch took a few steps back, his eyes filled with disbelief. The Thunder Accumulation Cauldron was the ultimate treasure of the Wangyue sect. It was born in the thunderclouds, and the lightning it summoned was more than 10 times more terrifying than ordinary lightning. However, it could not hurt Yichun. Shock flashed through the eyes of the three of them. Although they knew that Yichun was extraordinary, They did not expect him to be so strange. Grand Tutor Ning, who was fighting the patriarch of Valley God, paused. Shock surged in his eyes. Clearly, he had seen what had happened. I don't believe it. Again, the Wangyue patriarch roared and formed a seal again, controlling the thunder accumulation cauldron in the air. Rumble, another huge pillar of lightning descended from the sky. It was 30% more powerful than the previous one, but the outcome was the same. Haha. Yichin smirked in disdain. He grabbed the thunder accumulation cauldron from afar, and it shot toward Yichun immediately. No! The Wangyue patriarch roared and immediately performed a hand seal, trying to summon the thunder accumulation cauldron back. However, his so-called ultimate treasure did not listen to his orders at that moment. It fell into Yi Chen's hands like a swallow returning to its nest. The blood contract was forcefully erased. Bleck. His mind was damaged, and he was furious. The Wangyue patriarch could not help but spit a mouthful of blood. This brat's methods are extremely strange. We can't help him. Let's attack together. The Emperor of Dali, Shang Wudao, had a grim look in his eyes. Clearly, he could tell that something was wrong. He shouted and took the lead to attack. Rumble, for terrifying auras suddenly surged, shaking heaven and earth, causing despair. Other than the green dragon goddess, who had revealed her dragon form, the other three had their avatars appear behind them, and a spirit treasure floated above their heads. Kill! The four of them were filled with killing intent as they attacked at the same time. The sky changed color, and a murderous aura covered the entire space. Supreme One Sword. Taoist supremacy stretched out his hand, and a sword pellet appeared out of thin air. As soon as the sword orb appeared, it was accompanied by a dazzling green rainbow. A soaring sword aura tore through the sky like a peerless, immortal sword. Tai Sword, the sword of the founder of the Greater One sect. This sword had once killed no less than 5 martial saints. It was known as the number 1 spiritual treasure in the Tianfeng Sea region. Imperial Killing Fist. Shang Wudao, the Emperor of Dali, let out a long roar, and beams of dragon chi shot from every corner of the capital of Dali. Die. The gigantic WYRM that the Green Dragon Holy Mother had transformed into swayed and charged at Yichun like it was moving mountains and seas. Good timing. Yichun could not stop smirking. He leaped into the air, and the crowd saw the giant ape rising into the sky. It was a fatal punch, and it was ferocious. The first attack was the Emperor of Dali Dynasty's Emperor's Killer Fist. The Emperor's Killer Fist that gathered the Emperors was like the arm of a god and demon. It collided with Yi Chen's primordial demon Ape Fist. Humph! The Emperor of Dali grunted as shock rose within him. His punch was protected by the Emperor's chi, but it was still almost shattered by Yichun. Boom! At that moment, the Green Dragon Holy Mother's gigantic body collided with Yichun. The terrifying force from her body, which was more than 60 meters tall, sent Yichun flying 300 meters away. Die for me. The Taoist master, who was close by, waved the Tai sword in his hand. The Tai sword's sword gleam that was like a peerless, immortal sword stood on Yichen's arm directly. Shatter. Yichen groaned in pain. As soon as he gripped the Tai sword, countless cracks appeared on the Tai sword like shattered glass. Following a series of crackling sounds, Taoist Lord Dowie's Dowie sword suddenly collapsed. Even so, a bloody wound that was as wide as a finger appeared on Yichen's right arm. It was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Blurk! After the Taoist master spat a mouthful of blood, he was not sad. Instead, he was happy. He's injured. Kill. The patriarch of Wangyue went completely crazy. His green clothes fluttered in the wind, and his long hair danced in the wind. At that moment, the Emperor of Dali retreated instead of advancing. With a flash of his body, he dashed into the distance. Over there, Mu Kaiwei and Jiao were holding Meng Meng as they watched the scene nervously. When they saw the former's actions, the two women were so scared that their faces turned pale. Shang Wudao, how can you be so shameless? The first to notice it was Grand Tutor Ning. A hint of disappointment flashed through his eyes. Clearly, Shang Wudao felt that it would be difficult to determine the victor if the four of them attacked Yichen together. Therefore, he decided to target Mu Kaiwei and the rest. He tried to control Mu Kaiwei, Jiu and Ming Ming to threaten Yichen. Even though Grand Tutor Ning knew Shang Wudao's motive, he could do nothing because the Patriarch of Goddess of Valley did not give him a chance to escape. Shang Wudao, you're courting death. At this moment, the world suddenly shook with an incomparably ghastly loud sound. At that moment, Yi Chun, who had transformed into the primordial demon ape, had his hair stand on end. His eyes were terrifyingly cold. He was truly furious. He was not afraid of how Shang Wudao and the rest would kill him. What truly angered him was that these people had touched his reverse scale. Meeting his gaze, Dao, Master Tai, and the rest felt a chill in their hearts, but they did not back down. Mad Southern Yi, do you feel heartache? When you killed my son, how could I not feel heartache? The green flood dragon Holy Mother laughed maniacally. Today, we will make you watch as everyone related to you die tragically one after another, including your daughter. On the other side, Mu Kaiwei was running away with Meng Meng in her arms. The little girl in her arms seemed to cry out in fear, "Daddy." Just the word daddy made Yi Chun fall into complete madness. Endless black energy surged in his eyes as killing intent soared into the sky. Get lost. That was his daughter. If anything happened to his daughter, how was he going to explain himself, even if he found Su Yuhan and his parents? Roar. He let out an earth-shattering roar as he formed a fist seal. Like a primordial ferocious beast, he charged at the Patriarch of Moonview, who was blocking him. Boom! The Patriarch of Moonview's chest collapsed heavily. He let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sent flying. Meanwhile, the attacks of Dao Master Tai and the rest landed on Yichun. Endless fist energy surged out as if the world was shaking and the sky was churning. He's crazy. The eyelids of Dao Master Tai and the rest twitched. At the next moment, Yichun spat a mouthful of blood. He could not care less about wiping the blood off. He took a step forward and crossed 3,000 meters in an instant. Everyone saw a giant golden ape charging up from the sky. It carried boundless golden light that filled the world as it charged straight at the Great Li Emperor, Shang Wudao. P.S. I've eaten too much chili recently, and my hemorrhoids are acting up. I can't sit still. I've asked everyone to write 2 chapters today. There's no excuse. Under normal circumstances, I'll do 3 chapters. If I'm in good condition and efficient, I'll do 4 chapters. End of this chapter. Chapter 1150. 50,000 feet, 30,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 10,000 feet. Just as the Emperor of Dali, Shang Wudao was less than 10,000 feet away from Mu Kaiwei, who was fleeing with Meng Meng in her arms. A voice mixed with the world's angriest voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Shang Wudao, die. Oh no! Shang Wudao's eyelids twitched. He felt a cold, murderous aura behind him, like a ferocious beast that had escaped from its cage. The murderous aura surged violently. Boom! A fierce glint flashed across his eyes. Then, his body swayed as he changed his trajectory and dodged elsewhere. He knew very well that Yi Chun, who had escaped from Dao Master Tai and the rest, would not give him a chance to capture Mu Kaiwei and the rest. Even so, at that moment, he actually threw an Emperor's killer fist at Mu Kaiwei, who was 3,000 feet away. Huh? Mad Southern Yi, you can't save them? Shang Wudao laughed sinisterly. Rumble. The Emperor's killer fist that condensed his full strength seemed to crack the sky as it tore through countless voids and charged straight at Mu Kaiwei and the other 2. No! Under such terrifying might, all the hairs on Mu Kaiwei's body stood on end. Then, she chose to turn around and protect Meng Meng tightly in her arms. She did not consider whether she could protect the little girl like this. It was just a subconscious action. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a deafening roar rang out beside her ear, and a wisp of energy that spread out even cut open a shocking wound on her face. After that, there was no further movement. Mu Kai Wei and Jiao subconsciously turned around and saw a giant golden ape protecting them. Black energy surged in the giant golden ape's eyes. Its gaze was incomparably crazy, and its killing intent was like an ocean as it coughed up blood continuously. When Shang Wudao saw this, a chill shot through his heart. Crazy, he's really crazy. He's willing to take this punch of mine head-on to protect them. Young master, are you all right? Sob, sob, sob. Jiao could not hold back her tears and cried very hard. Yichun, Mu Caiwei's heart ached. Meanwhile, the little girl in her arms cried and struggled as if she wanted to get down. Go, take my daughter away. Yichun could not care less about wiping the blood at the corner of his lips. He slapped the two women, causing them to fly backward uncontrollably. Yichun, Mu Kaiwei roared crazily, but she was unable to change anything. She could only watch helplessly. Yichun turned around slowly and glared at Shang Wudao coldly. You must die. The killing intent in his heart was like an erupting volcano. It was one thing for these people to want to kill him, but they didn't even spare a child. Shang Wudao felt a chill in his heart when he sensed Shi Ying's gaze, and then he shouted in a stern voice, Fellow Taoist Qianji, fellow Taoist Shering, how long are you going to watch from the sidelines? Today, the four of us joined forces, and we're still unable to kill this brat. Once we die, all of you won't have it easy either. He was practically roaring as he said these words. When the onlookers heard this, they were stunned at first. Then their expressions changed as if they remembered something. They gasped and said, Qianji Martial Saint of Qianji Island? And Lady Ten Yin of the Shady, Sifting Gate? Fellow Taoist Qianji, fellow Taoist Ten Paths, the Grand Taoist Venerate in the distance immediately said, as long as you're willing to help us kill this brat, we'll definitely reward you handsomely after this. My moon sect is the same. The Moon Patriarch immediately expressed his stance. Clearly, he was desperate. And my Valley God sect, in an instant, the Grand Taoist Venerate, the Emperor of Dali, the Moon Patriarch, the Valley God Patriarch, and the Green Dragon Goddess who were attacking Yichun expressed their stance one after another. As you wish. Two voices slowly came from the void. Then endless black fog suddenly appeared in the void, and two figures slowly walked out of the black fog. One of them was a middle-aged man with a bare upper body. He looked like an ordinary person, and there were mysterious runes imprinted on his chest. The other person was a charming woman in black. She grabbed a soul from the black fog and swallowed it. Then, she looked straight at Yichun with green eyes. It's really the Patriarch of Qianji and Lady Ten Yin. Someone among the onlookers blurted out. What followed was a deathly silence and shock. Including the two of them, there were 7 martial saints who wanted to kill Yichun, excluding the Valley God Patriarch who was being held back by Grand Tutor Ning. There were 6 martial saints attacking Yichun together. Grand Tutor Ning's expression was extremely cold. Qianji, Lady Ten Yin, the two of you didn't stay in the West Ocean. How dare you come to the East Ocean? His heart sank to the bottom of the abyss. 6 martial saints were here. This included almost all the top powerhouses in the Tianfeng Sea area. The Patriarch of Qianji smiled arrogantly. Grand Tutor Ning, you heard it too. We only appear because we were invited by fellow Shang, fellow Tai Yi, and the rest. It's fine if you want us to help. After this is done, our shady sect will have one more elder in the Tianfeng Sea Area Alliance. Lady Ten Yin looked at the Grand Taoist Venerate and went straight to the point. Sure. The Grand Taoist Venerate nodded. Lady Ten Yin nodded in satisfaction. She then looked at Yichun and said while smiling, Little brother, you saw it too. The benefits they're offering are tempting enough. I won't hold back. Attack! Taoist Master Qianji's eyes turned cold as he waved his hand. 1,000 chance umbrella floated above his head like a war machine that harvested lives. Kill! The Grand Taoist Venerate and the rest attacked at the same time. The Emperor of Dali roared, Lady Ten Yin, this guy's mistress has run away with his daughter. Please capture them. I like this mission. It's just capturing 2 little girls. It's a piece of cake. Lady Ten Yin smiled coquettishly and chased after Mu Kai Wei and the rest who had been teleported by Yi Chun. "How dare you?" Yi Chun shouted. Coldness surged into the sky as killing intent exploded in his cold eyes. Golden light flickered on his body as he chased after them. "You're facing the siege of 6 martial saints, and you're about to die. Yet you still want to save them?" The Emperor of Dali, Shang Wudao, smirked coldly. In the next moment, the 6 of them attacked fearlessly and surrounded him. "Suppress." The patriarch of Qianji's face was ferocious as a terrifying palm print condensed in his hand. It was like a ferocious beast pouncing on Yi Chun with a terrifying airwave. "You're courting death." "Roar." Yi Chun threw a punch with all his might. He punched out and broke the patriarch of Qianji's palm print directly, smashing his right arm. "Mad Southern Yi die." The Emperor of Dali, Shang Wudao's dragon robe fluttered in the wind. The air wave directly tore the space beneath his feet as he threw another Emperor's killer fist. The other 3 attacked one after another. One of them brandished a sword. It was a high-grade spirit treasure. As soon as he swung it, wind and thunder resounded. Someone condensed the Dao seal. The Dao seal covered the space, erupting with terrifying, mysterious energy that shook the clouds. End of this chapter. Chapter 1151. Run. On a mountain 30 kilometers away from where Yi Chun and the rest were fighting, Mu Kai Wei carried Meng Meng and pulled Jur with one hand as she dashed toward the capital's city gate with all her might. There was only one thought in her mind. That was to escape. She was not afraid of death, but she was afraid that the little girl in her arms would fall into the enemy's hands. If that was the case, she would not be able to face Yi Chun even if she died. "Where do you think you're going?" A martial arts grandmaster of the Dali dynasty leaped over and charged at her in a frenzy without saying a word. "Die." Mu Kai Wei opened her mouth and spat out a snow-white sword that looked like a cicada's wing tore through the air and slashed it down. Her thunderous methods immediately deterred many people who wanted to attack. Only then did they realize that this woman was not as simple as they had imagined. "Girl, stay here." A martial king finally could not help but attack. His eyes shot out a huge hand that could hold up the sky and grabbed at Mu Kai Wei. Young Mistress Jur was in despair. Go quickly. Don't worry about me. I'll only drag you down." Although she had received the cultivation method from Yi Chun, she was not as hard-working as Mu Kai Wei in cultivation. She was only at the late-stage foundation building stage at the moment, and her combat strength was on par with a martial venerable. Mu Kai Wei took a deep breath in and handed the little girl in her arms to Jio. She gritted her teeth and looked at the approaching hand with determination. "Go, I'll cover the back." "No." Jio cried. "Go." Mu Kai Wei berated sternly. "Don't even think about leaving." Just when the hand was less than 10 feet away from the 2 girls, a huge scroll suddenly appeared in the air and blocked the hand. "Zhao Xing, you're a martial king after all. Now that you disregard your status and attack 2 weak women, do you still have any shame?" As the void trembled, an old man in Confucian robes appeared in front of Mu Kai Wei. The old man's entire body was filled with the aura of a scholar. Behind him, a sinister old man dressed in black appeared. His expression was extremely ugly. Chancellor of the Directorate, Wei Fengnian, as a subject of the Greatly dynasty, are you going to help the evildoer now? I've already voluntarily resigned from the position of Chancellor of the Imperial College. Now, I'm just a scholar and a disciple of the Grand Preceptor. Wei Fengnian's expression was indifferent. He then said to Mu Kai Wei and the others, "Miss Mu, you can leave. The city gate official is my son-in-law. He will let you out of the city. Many thanks, Teacher Wei." Mu Kai Wei was extremely grateful. Wei Fengnian was the Chancellor of the Imperial College, and the reason why he was helping her now was entirely because of Grand Preceptor Ning. With that, she led Jio towards the city gates. "Ha! Where do you think you're going?" At this moment, a bone-numbing and gloomy laughter came from the void, and then a black-clothed woman stood in front of Mu Kai Wei. "Lady Tenin." Wei Fengnian's expression changed greatly. Mu Kai Wei was in complete despair. "Martial Saint." A martial saint personally came out to stop them. Lady Tenin giggled. Little sister, can you come with big sister? I won't hurt you. Mu Kaiwei retreated step by step with Meng Meng in her arms. Her face was filled with despair and a bitter smile. Come with me. Lady Ten Yin reached out to grab the former. Hey, who dares to bully my teacher? At this critical moment, a black shadow suddenly attacked from the space beside Lady Ten Yin. It was a hoof. That hoof smashed down on Lady Ten Yin's face, sending her flying. Then a donkey was revealed, an extremely thin and weak little donkey that seemed like it could even be blown away by a gust of wind. Lady Ten Yin was dumbfounded. The onlookers were also dumbfounded. Before she could react, she saw the donkey carrying Mu Kaiwei and the other two. With a whoosh, it turned into a gust of wind and flew towards the city gate at an extremely fast speed. Someone gulped and said, That was a donkey? Am I seeing things? It should be. Another person nodded with a dazed expression. Lady Ten Yin's face had almost been disfigured by a donkey's kick. Only Wei Feng Yin revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. It's Lord Xiaotong. I didn't expect it to be a martial saint. Rumble. At the scene of the battle, boulders rolled and mountains exploded. This earth-shattering battle had already reached its most tragic state. Roar! Yi Chun, who had transformed into the primordial demon ape, was tightly entangled by the 5 martial saints. He let out a furious roar, causing the mountains and the ground to tremble. Even with the protection of the formation, an endless amount of dust was swept up by the waves. Get lost! Yi Chen's fist intent was invincible. He swung both fists and landed heavily on the chest of the Dali Emperor, Shang Wudao, when the 5 people's monstrous attacks landed on him. He didn't need to use any divine abilities or spells, because his body was his greatest asset and his most powerful weapon. Shang Wudao screamed and retreated continuously because half of his body was almost smashed by Yi Chen's punch. He felt slightly regretful as he looked at Yi Chun, who was in a berserk state like an ancient ferocious beast. It was because Yi Chun kept chasing after him despite being besieged by so many people. It was as if he would not stop until he was dead. If this continued, some of the people present would probably die. Thinking to this point, he could not help but place his hopes on Lady Ten Yin's. He could tell that Yi Chun cared a lot about his daughter. Once Lady Ten Yin's captured Yi Chen's daughter, their situation would improve greatly. At this moment, a streak of black energy swept over from the horizon, revealing Lady Ten Yin's figure. However, she was empty-handed. Shang Wudao's expression changed slightly. Ten Yin's, where are they? They ran away. Lady Ten Yin's expression was extremely cold. She did not explain the exact process, but her expression was extremely gloomy. What? Shang Wudao was infuriated. You're a martial saint, yet you can't catch 3 ants? On the other hand, Yi Chen made up his mind when he heard that. Monstrous, murderous aura swept through the sky in his terrifying blood-red eyes. All of you will die today. Boom! He took a step forward and his fist shook the void, carrying a monstrous, murderous aura as he charged at the Patriarch of Qianji, who was closest to him. Qianji Divine Tao. The Patriarch of Qianji's expression changed slightly as he shouted hurriedly. He activated his cultivation base with all his might and activated the spirit treasure, the 1,000 chance umbrella, above his head. He wanted to activate supreme killing intent and kill Yi Chun completely. Tens of thousands of rays of light bloomed from the 1,000 chance umbrella. They shot at Yi Chun like tens of thousands of arrows. Yi Chun's golden hair stood on end. He roared and advanced instead of retreating. His fists seemed like they were going to shatter the world. Thousands of rays of Qianji, divine light, struck Yi Chen's body. Although they pierced through Yi Chen's body, his wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This showed how terrifying Yi Chen's physical body was. Not only could such a method not stop Yi Chun, but it also completely triggered his ferocity. He became more and more courageous as he fought. He was determined to kill the Patriarch of Qianji. End of this chapter. Chapter 1152. Save fellow Qianji. Dao Master Tai and the rest roared furiously. They unleashed their trump cards, holding high-grade spirit treasures and forming terrifying palm prints to attack Yi Chun. Even Lady Tianyin was no exception. This battle was extremely intense. It was unprecedented in the history of the Tianfeng Sea area. Everyone was fighting with their lives on the line. There was no chance at all. In the distance, everyone who had been watching the battle had goosebumps. They were clearly completely shocked. It would not be an exaggeration to describe Yi Chun as a genius to be able to force the 6 martial saints to such a state. However, this was still a fatal situation. Although Yi Chun's combat ability was extremely powerful, there would always be a moment when he was exhausted. How could he withstand the siege of 6 martial saints? Rumble. Finally, the patriarch of Qianji's 1,000 chance umbrella was crushed by Yi Chun's fists. Yi Chun punched through the patriarch of Qianji's body while being attacked by the 5 of them from behind, crushing his soul directly. The patriarch of Qianji was dead. This was the first martial saint to die in this battle. Even so, his body was already riddled with holes. Even though his powerful physical body was rapidly recovering, the old wounds had yet to heal, and new ones were added to his body. A rain of blood was falling from the sky, as if the heavens were mourning the death of a saint and sending down a strange phenomenon. Everyone's hearts were twitching. Despite being besieged by 6 martial saints, Yi Chun still managed to kill one of them. This was simply too terrifying. The expressions of Dao, Master Tai, and the rest finally changed. To be precise, they were shocked. He won't be able to hold on for long. Shang Wu Dao, the emperor of Dali, roared. He was really panicking. If Yi Chun did not die in this battle, he would definitely be a nightmare for the Dali dynasty in the future. Kill, kill, kill. He formed a seal with both hands and forcefully extracted all the dragon veins in the capital of Dali, gathering them into his body. Everyone saw countless golden dragon energy shooting over from all directions and fusing into his body. His aura became more and more powerful. Today, I'll fight you with the destiny of a country. Mad Southern Yi, you can't beat us. You must die. Shang Wu Dao was going all out. Kill. The patriarch of Wang Yue's sleeves fluttered. Suddenly, a beam of divine light shot out. It tore through the air and landed on Yi Chun like a bolt from the blue. It immediately left a palm-wide wound on Yi Chun's chest. It was a shocking sight. However, Yi Chun did not even frown. He moved his fists and arrived before the patriarch of Wang Yue in one step. Not good, stop him. A horsetail whisk appeared in his hand. The horsetail whisk grew in the wind and turned into countless white threads that wrapped around Yi Chun in an attempt to make him stay. Flood Dragon Bone. The green dragon goddess revealed madness on her face. She forcefully took out a dragon bone from her body and turned it into a sharp spear that shot at Yi Chun. The dragon's bone pierced through Yi Chun's back directly, revealing his white bones. Blood splattered, but it still could not stop him. Roar! He let out a long roar, and his ferocious nature erupted. The golden primordial demonic ape's body expanded by another 3 meters. His golden fists were burning, turning into fist shadows that filled the sky and shook the heavens. With a rumble, the mountain collapsed. Blurg, when one of the fist shadows landed on the patriarch of Wang Yue's body, he immediately spat a mouthful of blood and was severely injured. Countless bones in his body were broken, and scarlet blood splattered into the sky. He controlled his body and wanted to retreat. Immediately after, another fist shadow blasted over. The patriarch of Wang Yue, who was already severely injured, widened his eyes, and his head was shattered on the spot. Even so, his tenacious life force still allowed a new head to grow. Yi Chun's eyes were filled with violent killing intent. He pounced on him and grabbed him before his head had completely grown out. He roared and raised his hands above his head. He pulled with all his might, and a large amount of blood instantly filled the sky. The patriarch of Wang Yue's body was torn into 2. His soul left his body as if it wanted to escape. However, Yi Chun opened his mouth and swallowed it. The patriarch of Wang Yue was dead, and his soul was destroyed. At this moment, everyone was extremely shocked. The scene before them was simply too brutal. tearing a martial saint apart with his bare hands and devouring his soul. How was this a human? He was clearly a ferocious beast. The expressions of the remaining Taoist master, the Green Dragon Holy Mother, Lady Tenine, the Emperor of Dali, and the rest changed drastically. They could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. I won't interfere in this matter anymore. Mad Southern Yi, I'll leave now. Lady Tinian's expression changed a few times. After saying that, she rode a black fog and flew into the distance. She was really afraid. The 6 martial saints had joined forces. Apart from the 5 of them who were Second Revolution martial saints, there was also the Taoist master, a Third Revolution martial saint. With such combat power, even a 4th Revolution martial saint or a 5th Revolution martial saint would die. However, Yi Chen still killed 2 of them. While her departure caused an uproar, it also caused the expressions of the 3 of them to turn uglier. The 6 martial saints were no match for Yi Chen, even if they joined forces, let alone the 3 of them who were left. Mad Southern Yi, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. The Green Dragon Holy Mother's eyes were bloodshot. She then controlled her gigantic body to charge at Yi Chen. She tried to use her gigantic body to suppress Yi Chen. However, under her terrified gaze, Yi Chen's body doubled in size again. He was like a giant ape that could hold up the sky. Bang! Yi Chen took a few steps back after taking the heavy blow. Before the former could react, he grabbed her gigantic body with both hands. At the next moment, he opened his bloody mouth, and as his ferocious fangs appeared, he pierced into the former's body and sucked her blood crazily. No! She struggled frantically, trying to break free. However, it was futile. She could only watch as the energy in her body rapidly dissipated. Holy Mother! The Taoist master's heart ached. Madness appeared in his eyes as he chose to sacrifice his lifespan and burn the life force in his body. God-destroying spear. At that moment, he chose to use the forbidden secret technique of the Grand One sect with all his might. His body turned into a blood-colored spear that tore through space and pierced into Yi Chen's head. Lunatic, they're all lunatics, Shang Wudao roared. Roar. Almost half of the blood-colored spear pierced into Yi Chen's head, nailing his body heavily and sending him flying. Ha, die. Let's die together. The god-destroying spear that the Taoist master had transformed into laughed maniacally as he tried to destroy Yi Chen's soul. However, at the next moment, his tone changed abruptly as he said in a trembling voice, "Why you don't have the Shinting Acupoint?" The so-called Shinting Acupoint was where the souls of martial artists and spell masters resided. Once the Shinting Acupoint was broken, the soul would be broken as well. However, he did not know that Yi Chen was not a martial artist or a spell master, but an immortal cultivator. The place where an immortal cultivator's divine consciousness was stored was called the Sea of Consciousness or the Naiwan Palace. It was not the same place as the Shinting Acupoint. End of this chapter. Chapter 1154. Impossible. This is impossible. The blood-colored spear that the Grand One Tao Venerable had transformed into roared crazily. The forbidden secret technique that he had risked his life to unleash was useless against Yi Chen. How could he not be hysterical? Yi Chen's eyes were bloodshot. He turned around abruptly and broke the blood-colored spear. Along with it, the Grand One Tao Venerable's soul was shattered. Xing, the green dragon goddess, who was on the verge of death, cried bitterly after witnessing everything. She was filled with regret and guilt. She could not help but recall the time when the Grand One Tao Venerable was still a child of the Grand One sect and met her in the sea. At that time, she was just a little dragon. However, it was this meeting that caused the 2 of them to have feelings for each other. In the end, they ignored everyone's objections and got together. They even gave birth to young Master Yaoyue. Due to the different ideals of humans and demons, she and the Grand One Tao Venerable had many conflicts in the future. In the end, they fell out and became enemies. They did not interact for hundreds of years. Ah! She roared crazily. Rumble, she chose to self-destruct directly. Instantly, it was like a nuclear bomb had exploded. Surging energy waves swept out in all directions. Yichen spat a mouthful of blood under such a commotion. His body was sent flying heavily. Wherever the terrifying energy wave passed, everything turned into dust. Even the space was blasted through. The world suddenly became deathly silent. Countless onlookers were shocked, but they were silent. They did not know how to describe their feelings. Before this, the 6 martial saints besieged Yichun. Everyone thought that there would be no suspense. However, the real outcome was that the 5 martial saints died in Yichun's hands. After the smoke and dust dispersed, Shang Wudao spat a mouthful of blood. Shang Wudao spat out a mouthful of blood and looked around with a pale face. He suddenly burst into laughter and said, "Dead. You're finally dead." Grand Tutor Ning and the Patriarch of Valley God, who were affected by the storm, were also pale. Their eyes were filled with fear. "Is he dead?" Grand Tutor Ning smiled bitterly. However, at that moment, the sunken ground suddenly trembled, and then a tall figure rose from the ground. The figure was covered in wounds and scabs, especially the bloody hole between his brows. One could even see the white bone. It was a ghastly sight. Whoosh! The silent heaven and earth suddenly burst into an uproar. The smile on Shang Wudao's face froze, and his eyes were filled with shock. "He's not dead. How is this possible?" Putting aside the fact that the 6 of them had besieged Yi Chun and injured him, the power of the green dragon goddess's self-destruction alone was enough to kill any martial saint. However, Yi Chun was not dead. Cough, cough, cough. Yi Chun spoke slowly as he coughed violently. His voice was extremely hoarse. "I'm not dead. Are you disappointed?" As he finished speaking, he took a heavy step forward. Even though this step was extremely difficult, it made Shang Wudao feel even more pressured. Both of them were injured. Although Yi Chen's injuries seemed more severe, Shang Wudao still did not dare to attack. "Fellow Taoist Gu, kill him!" Shang Wudao roared. The Patriarch of Grains did not move. He admitted that he wanted to kill Yi Chun before, but after witnessing the brutality of the battle, he did not dare to do so anymore. Even if he wanted to make a move, Grand Tutor Ning, who was in front of him, wouldn't sit back and watch. "No one can save you now." Yi Chun dragged his heavy footsteps toward the former. He would cough blood with every step he took. His injuries were too severe. The combat strength of the 6 martial saints was equivalent to that of a perfected nascent soul realm cultivator. Although he had devoured the 2 minds of the Great Li dynasty and increased his cultivation to late nascent soul realm, he was still able to unleash his power with the help of the ancient demonic ape. But he was still heavily injured. Shang Wudao retreated repeatedly. His expression changed several times, and then a look of determination flashed in his eyes. A jade talisman suddenly appeared in his hand. The moment he saw the jade talisman, Grand Tutor Ning's expression changed. This is the Emperor's Throne Treasure Talisman of the Great Yin Dynasty in the Middle State. There were countless countries in the ancient barren world. These countries were also divided into different levels, dynasties, emperor dynasties, whether it was the Great Dynasties or the Dali Dynasty. They were all dynasties, but in the Central Plains, there was an imperial dynasty. The so-called Emperor Dynasty was a country with an Emperor Realm expert. They were the true masters of this world. Not good. Thinking to this point, Grand Tutor Ning hurriedly said, "Fellow Yi, run quickly. He's going to summon an Emperor Realm expert." He had been with Shang Wudao for 1,000 years. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the former would be in contact with a Great Yin Dynasty in the Middle State behind his back. "Ha ha, it's too late, too late." Shang Wudao laughed maniacally and suddenly crushed the jade talisman in his hand. "Mad Southern Yi, this is the trap I set up. I use you to help me eliminate Dao Master Tai and the rest. I have to say, I'm very satisfied with you." Almost at the same time he crushed the jade talisman, the originally silent sky suddenly changed color and the wind and clouds surged. Rumble. In front of everyone's eyes, a huge hand as heavy as a mountain stretched out from the void. One palm. Yi Chun was slapped into the void rift with just one palm. Even though his body was huge, he could not resist the palm at all. The sky gradually brightened, and the hand dissipated. However, Yi Chun was nowhere to be seen. Only a gigantic void rift that looked like a natural chasm appeared in this world. A terrifying spatial storm came from it. Ha ha ha! Shang Wudao's wild laughter resounded through the world. Only I'm the one who laughs in the end. Everyone fell silent, immersed in the huge hand from before. Just what kind of existence could possess such power to pierce through space with a single palm strike? No one thought that Yi Chun could still be alive. Even if that terrifying palm could not kill him, he could not survive the spatial storm. Grand Tutor Ning staggered and looked silently at Shang Wudao, who was laughing maniacally. A trace of sorrow and lethargy surged, as if he had aged dozens of years in an instant. You're really terrifying? Grand Tutor, are you satisfied with my performance? Shang Wudao looked at him like a victor looking down at a loser. Grand Tutor Ning's lips moved slightly. If I'm not wrong, you're in contact with the Great Qin dynasty, right? How did you obtain an emperor's throne, powerhouse's talisman treasure? Shang Wudao slowly walked to his side and laughed sinisterly in a low voice. Because after the ghost ship appeared a year ago, it was the Great Qin dynasty who contacted me. This emperor's throne talisman treasure is also the reward the Great Qin dynasty gave me for participating in the encirclement of the Great Qin dynasty's old subordinates. Shang Wudao was proud. Blurg! Grand Tutor Ning spat a mouthful of blood and walked into the distance while trembling. His figure was extremely lonely. Shang Wudao watched him leave quietly with a gloomy gaze. Grand Tutor, on account of our 1,000 years of friendship, I won't kill you. I'll give you 3 days to leave the Great Li dynasty. End of this chapter. Chapter 1155. On that very day, a piece of shocking news spread throughout the entire Tianfeng Sea area, centered around the Dali dynasty. Mad Southern Yi and the Great Li dynasty fought against the Grand One supremacy, the Green Dragon Holy Mother, the Moonwatch Patriarch, the Patriarch of Qianji, the Emperor of Dali, and the Lady of Tenin. This was the result of an unprecedented and shocking battle. For martial saints had been killed by Yi Chun. Only Lady Tenin, Dali dynasty's Emperor Shang Wudao, and the Patriarch of the Valley Goddess sect survived. In the end, it was the Emperor of Dali who used his great divinity to summon an Emperor's throne powerhouse to kill Mad Southern Yi. When the news spread, the Tai sect, the Moon Clan, the Green Dragon Clan, and the other forces were in despair. The other forces were all shocked. They were shocked by Yi Chen's terrifying battle prowess and shocked by the Emperor of Dali's methods. A strong practitioner of the Emperor's throne. In the entire Tianfeng Sea region, there had never been such a person. Only the faraway Middle Continent had his legend. However, the Emperor of Dali actually had such means. At that moment, the Dali dynasty sent out an army, led by the Emperor of Dali himself. They first swept across the East Sea, then the South Sea, the North Sea, and the West Sea. The Yin Luo sect's martial saint, Lady Tenin, and the old ancestor of the Valley God sect surrendered. Following that was the Greater One sect, Moon sect, and other forces. Anyone could tell that Shang Wudao, the Emperor of the Great Li dynasty, had finally revealed his wild ambition after the fall of such a top-notch expert in the Tianfeng Sea area, to unify the Tianfeng Sea area. However, so long as one chose to resist, all of them perished or had their sects and clans annihilated. For a time, a horrifying and bloody suppression arose in the entire Tianfeng Sea area. Tianfeng City, King Mu Fort. When Mu Kaiwei and the rest, who had escaped, heard about Yi Chen's death, they were overwhelmed with grief and fainted several times. Only Meng Meng, who was kept in the dark, was clamoring to find her father. Mu Kaiwei had to tell her that her father had gone to a faraway place and would only be back after a while. And it was on the 3rd day that Dali dynasty realized its ambition, unifying the Tianfeng Sea area and sending troops to Tianfeng City. It was surrounded by millions of soldiers. The King Mu Fort was merely a grade 7 sect, and it was in a precarious position amidst such a great momentum and endless killing intent. Just as the million-strong army approached the city and the entire King Mu Fort fell into despair, A woman with an ethereal aura and a white veil on her face suddenly descended onto Tianfeng City. The powerhouses of the King Mu fort looked as if they were facing a great enemy. Mu Kaiwei hugged the little girl and said in despair, "Are you here to kill me too?" "Ha!" The woman covered her mouth and laughed. Her beautiful eyes landed on Mu Kaiwei. "On the contrary, I'm here to save you." "Save me?" The vigilance in Mu Kaiwei's eyes intensified. "Who are you? Why did you save me?" The woman smiled faintly and said, "I come from the Middle Continent, the Jade Lake sacred ground. Your constitution and temperament are suitable to become a disciple of my Jade Lake sacred ground." Jade Lake sacred ground? Everyone looked confused. Obviously, they had never heard of it. Mu Kaiwei bit her lip and said, "How is it compared to the Dali dynasty?" "Dali dynasty?" The woman smiled mockingly as if she was disdainful. "A piece of trash like the Dali Emperor doesn't even have the right to guard the door in my Jade Lake sacred ground. If you agree, I can help you resolve this crisis today." As soon as she said that, the King Mu Fort's camp was in an uproar. Clearly, they did not expect the other party to have such a powerful background. "As long as you help me destroy the Dali dynasty, I'm willing to go with you," Mu Kaiwei said weakly. "That's impossible." The woman refused decisively. Although the Dali dynasty is nothing in the eyes of the Jade Lake sacred ground, it's backed by the great Imperial dynasty. If the Dali dynasty is destroyed, the great Imperial dynasty won't sit idly by. At this point, she seemed to be worried that Mu Kaiwei would refuse, so she added, "However, if you follow me back to the sect, I can guarantee you that in less than 3 years, you'll be able to personally destroy the Dali dynasty." Mu Kaiwei still did not say anything. After hesitating for a few seconds, she looked at the little girl in her arms and said, "Can I bring her with me?" "No." The woman rejected instinctively. Then, she pointed a finger at the little girl's forehead, and a strand of true dragon chi shot out from the little girl's forehead. The strand of true dragon chi soared into the air and suddenly turned into a golden dragon that coiled in the air, roaring endlessly. In that instant, a gleam of light flashed through the woman's eyes, and she immediately changed her mind. "She can go with you, and she'll be personally taught by an emperor's throne expert." "All right, I agree." Only then did Mu Kaiwei let out a sigh of relief. Beside her, Ju grabbed the corner of her clothes tightly, her face filled with reluctance. "Young mistress, I can't bear to part with you." "Little girl, come with me." A streak of light flashed through the air, and then an old man in cloth clothes arrived instantly. He studied Jiu lovingly. "I'm from the Radiant Saint Hall." Jiu's eyes lit up, and then they dimmed. She said with reddened eyes, "But I don't want to be separated from young mistress." "Ha ha." The old man was immediately caught between laughter and tears. "Only by returning with me will you have the chance to meet your young mistress in the future. Otherwise, the gap between you and your young mistress will only grow greater and greater." "Is that so?" Only then did Jiu wipe away her tears. Her mood lightened up, and she said, "Grandpa, I'll go with you." She glanced at the army gathered below the city walls and said slyly, "But you have to help me kill them." "All right." The old man and the woman looked at each other. The two of them charged off, and in a single moment, the army was annihilated. The capital of Dali. It was the same tattered donkey cart, the same skinny donkey, and the same blind old man. The Grand Preceptor Ning sat in the donkey cart with a scripture in his hand, allowing the cart to shake. The two sides of the streets were filled with all the scholars and scholars of the Dali Empire. All of them watched the donkey cart leave silently. In the end, a scholarly man emerged. He stopped the donkey cart and bowed solemnly. "Grand Preceptor, I'm willing to leave with you." The donkey cart slowly stopped. The Grand Preceptor Ning lifted the curtains and looked at the scholarly man outside. "I'm no longer the Grand Preceptor of Dali, but you're still our teacher and teacher." The scholarly man bowed heavily. He was extremely determined. Rumble. Suddenly, countless students knelt down on both sides of the street and said in unison, "Teacher, we're willing to leave with you." Grand Preceptor Ning watched this scene silently. His gaze swept across every young face, and tears welled up in his eyes. From now on, there will be no more scholars in Dali. Now that I've unified the Tianfeng Sea area, I'd like to see who dares to kill my army of 1,000,000. In the palace, the infuriated Shang Wudao smashed a beloved treasure. Lady Tenin, go and destroy the King Mu fort now. Lady Tenin was about to move when she suddenly realized that a terrifying pressure had descended on her surroundings, causing her to be unable to move. Even the Dali Empire's emperor, Shang Wudao, was no exception. Under their shocked gazes, a barefooted woman in snow-white clothes slowly walked over. Her indifferent voice sounded, "Mu Kaiwei is already a disciple of the Jade Lake Sacred Land. If you touch the King Mu fort, the great Yin Imperial dynasty won't be able to protect you." In the turbulent southern region, Ying Wei, who was dressed in a black dragon robe, sat upright on a throne that was stained with blood. Beneath him, Qin Jian, who was wrapped in blood, knelt on one knee. "Master, there's news from the Tianfeng Sea area. Mad Southern Yi fought 6 martial saints, but in the end, he was killed by the Emperor's throne talisman summoned by the Dali Empire's Emperor, an Emperor's throne powerhouse?" Ying Wei did not move, and his deep eyes did not change at all. "A mere Emperor's throne powerhouse can't even kill me. So how can he kill Mad Southern Yi? Just you wait. Whether it's the Dali Empire or the great Yin behind it, the day of destruction is not far away." In the eastern wilderness, the oldest ancient clan, the Shi family, Shi Qianhan, stood at the top of the pavilion and raised his eyes to look in the direction of the Tianfeng Sea area. He muttered, "Brother Yi, I don't believe that you're dead. I'm now the Shi family's young ancestor, and I'll set off for the Middle Continent to search for the ancient ancestors' remains. I'll wait for you in the Middle Continent." In the eastern wilderness, as one of the 3 overlords, the entire Huang nation was made up of women. There was not a single man. Even the ruler of the Huang nation was a woman. In the luxurious bedroom of the Empress, the peerlessly beautiful Empress stood barefooted in front of the window without a shred of clothing on her body. The Empress looked at the information in her hands and muttered, "He fought against 6 martial saints alone, killed 4 of them, and finally forced an Emperor's throne powerhouse to make a move. Interesting, interesting. What's interesting? Let me see." At that moment, as the curtain was lifted, a naked man walked out. He hugged the Empress from behind and chuckled. The Empress immediately revealed a shy expression. Her body softened, and she passed the information in her hands to the man behind her. If outsiders saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked, speechless. The dignified Empress of a nation actually went against the ancestral teachings and hid a man in her bedroom. As the man looked at the information, the Empress snuggled into the man's arms like a little bird and said gently, "Ah, Quan, the technique you taught Yuan last night was really magical. Slut, scram to the side." However, the man pushed her away forcefully. "What's wrong?" The Empress' expression changed slightly. Obviously, she did not expect the man who usually doted on her to lose his composure like that. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" The Patriarch of Hell's eyes were fierce. "My brother was bullied. What do you think?" "You mean?" The Empress was stunned at first. Then she seemed to recall something. She had an incredulous expression on her face and said coldly, "Do you need my help? Our Empress Kingdom has a teleportation formation that connects directly to the Tianfeng Sea area. It can gather 5 million troops in half a day. No need. Just teach the Greatly a lesson. For example, we can destroy 8 to 10 of their sections." The Patriarch immediately laughed. With little Ye's methods, how can a so-called Emperor's throne powerhouse kill him? I'll continue to wait for him in this gentle place. Although he said that, the coldness in his eyes became more intense. The great Li's Emperor, Shang Wudao, great Yin Imperial dynasty, Emperor's throne powerhouse? I'm not done with you. P.S. Chapter 5. Happy Lantern Festival, everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 1156. Central Province. It was almost dusk in a sparsely populated area. In the middle of the desolate mountain, the shrubs were overgrown and the weeds were about half a person's height. It was summer, and thumb-sized mosquitoes were flying everywhere in the forest. Ha! Following a slight crisp sound, a faint murmur came from the forest. "Steward Wu, are you sure that evil beast will really pass by here?" Moving one's line of sight closer, one could see that there were more than a dozen people hiding in the forest near the stream, staring intently at the stream below. These people were all men. Whether it was their attire or appearance, they were all very simple, like ordinary villagers. However, each of them was holding weapons such as knives, forks, bows, and arrows. The one who spoke was a strong man. Because he was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, his thick arms had already been bitten by the mosquitoes in the mountains, and there were many red lumps. The one called Steward Wu was an old man in a green robe and a silk scarf on his head. This person obviously had a high status among the dozen people. "Lower your voice." Steward Wu made a shushing gesture and said to the strong man, "Tian Peng, why would I lie to you? Every day at dusk, that evil beast will come here to drink water, and it has never stopped. If you don't believe me, you can ask Li Liuji." The Li Liuji he spoke of was a middle-aged man with a thin body but a pair of piercing eyes. Li Liuji nodded repeatedly and said, "I can swear that I have observed it for a month. There's no mistake." Hearing this, the crowd completely suppressed the feeling of irritation in their hearts. After all, Li Liuji was a famous hunter in Dongzhong village. He could draw a stone bow without missing a single shot. A month ago, the village frequently lost people, and this matter even affected the county government. The village official, Zhang Yuanwei, had no choice but to investigate under pressure. The result was that there seemed to be a tiger in the mountain, and the culprit of all this was this tiger. Because of this, Zhang Yuanwei had no choice but to order Steward Wu to mobilize the strength of the entire village and offer a reward for killing this tiger. The strong man, Tian Peng, rolled his eyes and stared at Steward Wu. "Steward Wu, if we really kill that evil beast, will everyone get 10 taels of silver?" When these words were spoken, everyone couldn't help but look at Manager Wu with gazes filled with excitement. 1 tael of silver was equivalent to 2,000 copper coins. It could buy more than 300 caddies of rice. If it was 10 taels of silver, it would be 3,000 caddies of rice. It was enough to feed a family of 5 for a year. Of course, Steward Wu stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Our Yizhang village doesn't have a lot of people to begin with. If we continue to let this tiger bully us, we will be completely crippled. Don't worry, if you can kill this tiger, each of you will get 10 silver taels. The one who contributes the most will get 20 silver taels." Tian Peng was so excited that he rubbed his fists and palms together when he heard 20 taels of silver. He couldn't wait to rush out and start killing right now. At this moment, he noticed that a dark-skinned man beside him was silent. He couldn't help but ask, "Old Zhang, what are you spacing out for?" The one called Old Zhang was about 50 years old. He shouldn't have been in the tiger hunting brigade at this age, but because he was a famous blacksmith in the village, he had trained his arm strength, so he was allowed to join. After Old Zhang regained his senses, he gritted his teeth and said, "I'm thinking, after I get the reward this time, should I find a husband for my daughter? Look at your Cui Hua's burly and ferocious appearance. Which man would dare to marry her?" Tian Peng muttered with a strange expression. Old Zhang's expression became angry. Just as he was about to reprimand him, he heard Li Liuji whisper, "Stop talking. There's movement." Everyone immediately fell silent. They followed Li Liuji's gaze and saw a faint shadow walking towards the stream from the end of the forest. When everyone saw it clearly, they realized that it was a giant tiger that was nearly 2 meters long. Its body was densely covered with colorful stripes. A spotted tiger. This beast is a spotted tiger. Li Liuji lowered his voice and said, "So it's still a valuable evil creature." Someone was shocked. Not long after, the spotted tiger walked to the stream and started drinking water. Obviously, it didn't notice the people in the forest. "This is the time, kill." Taking advantage of the moment when the tiger lowered its head, Tian Peng shouted and rushed out with a chopping knife in hand. As he charged out, the remaining dozen or so people also swarmed out, as if they were infected by Tian Peng's morale. Whoosh! At this moment, a sharp arrow shot out from the forest, heading straight for the spotted tiger. Obviously, it was Li Liuji's attack. He didn't expect the arrow to kill the tiger, because that would not happen. He only needed to injure it and make it lose too much blood. However, when his arrow, which had always hit its mark, was about to hit the tiger, a black wall suddenly appeared in the tiger's body and blocked the arrow. Shit! Li Liuji's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly got up and roared. This is a demonic tiger that is cultivated to a certain level. Tianpeng quickly come back. They were all ordinary people. They might have a chance against a normal tiger, but if they were to go against a demonic tiger, they would definitely be unable to withstand a single blow. In fact, he wasn't the only one who saw the scene just now. Everyone else saw it too, but it was already too late for them to turn back. Roar! As the tiger's roar echoed through the forest, the spotted tiger suddenly turned around and opened its bloody mouth, directly swallowing Tianpeng, who was at the front. Crunch, crunch, with a series of chewing sounds, a living person disappeared in an instant. The rest of the people screamed crazily and pushed each other as they retreated. Ouch, my leg, my leg. In his panic, blacksmith Old Zhang twisted his ankle and fell to the ground, trying to call for help from the others. However, how could they, who were in a state of panic and only wanted to escape, save him? Old Zhang could only tremble all over, looking at the spotted tiger with a face full of despair as it stretched its tail and approached him step by step. As if it had swallowed Tianpeng, it suddenly opened its mouth and directly bit at Old Zhang. Old Zhang closed his eyes in despair. Bang! At this moment, Old Zhang suddenly heard a loud noise, as if something had fallen from the sky. It was accompanied by the smell of blood. Oh my God, what is that? A person? The people who ran up the mountain looked back and saw a living person suddenly falling from the sky and smashing the spotted tiger to death. Old Zhang couldn't help but open his eyes and saw an incomparably bloody scene. The spotted tiger that looked like a demon was now lying on the ground, almost out of shape after being smashed. On top of it laid a bloody person. It seemed to be a man, but his eyes were closed. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. End of this chapter. Chapter 11:57. Old Zhang was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, his body trembled and his pants became wet. He did not feel ashamed at all. There was only a strong feeling of surviving a disaster in his heart. It was as if he had just passed through the gates of hell. After an unknown amount of time, someone finally couldn't help but walk over. They surrounded the man on top of the tiger's carcass and began to discuss. It's really a person. This person is seriously injured. I don't know if he's dead or alive. This person seems to have fallen from the sky and smashed the tiger to death. He saved us after Old Zhang recovered with great difficulty. He pushed through the crowd and slowly walked over. He bent down and put his hand under the man's nose. He's not dead yet. He's still breathing, he said excitedly. The crowd immediately exclaimed, he's still alive after such a serious injury. It's unbelievable. But looking at his injuries, I don't think he's going to survive. Why don't we just leave him alone? Someone said. The rest of the people immediately became silent. That's right. They were all poor commoners. Otherwise, they wouldn't have participated in the tiger hunt for 10 taels of silver. Bringing back such an injured person would cost a lot of money, not to mention food and drink. Steward Wu squeezed out from the crowd and said hesitantly, this person's origin is unknown. I think no. Old Zhang suddenly interrupted him. Steward Wu, don't forget. If it wasn't for this person, we would all be dead. The crowd became silent again. Steward Wu looked ashamed. Steward Wu. Old Zhang's expression softened. You said earlier that we will each get 10 taels of silver for killing the tiger. The one who contributed the most will get 20 taels. Does that still count? Yes, of course it does. Steward Wu nodded. Good. Old Zhang said, Tianpeng is dead. I don't want my 10 taels of silver anymore. Give Tianpeng's share and my share to his family. As for the 20 taels of silver, you have to treat this person's injury. When the others heard this, they all had a look of shame on their faces. Li Liuji took over and said, give half of my 10 taels of silver to Old Zhang. I will also give 5 taels of silver for my share to treat this little brother's injury. Whether he can survive or not depends on his luck. And me, the rest of the people spoke one after another. Dongzhong Village. A small village with a population of less than 500. Because the local people's surname was Zhang, it was named Dongzhong Village. Dang, dang, dang. At the entrance of Zhang Ji's iron shop at the east end of the village, a plump woman was standing in the hot shed, waving the iron hammer in her hand to hit a piece of red-hot iron. At this time, a group of people surrounded old Zhang and hurriedly rushed into the house. Old Zhang was carrying a young man covered in blood on his back. The blacksmithing woman's expression changed slightly, and she immediately rushed into the house with the hammer in her hand. As soon as she entered the door, she shouted, "Father, you can't die. If you die, how can I live?" Halfway through her sentence, she stopped abruptly. She saw her father standing by the bed, alive and well, and a man covered in blood was lying on the bed. "Father, who is he?" The woman smiled bitterly. Old Zhang took out a dry towel and wiped the body of the person on the bed. "Chuehua, go and get your Grandpa Lin here. This is a matter of life and death." In just half a day, everyone in Dongzhong Village knew about the process of hunting the tiger. When they found out that they had encountered a demonic tiger that had cultivated to its peak, everyone broke out in cold sweat. When they heard that a young man covered in blood fell from the sky and crushed the tiger to death, countless people were in disbelief. Some people didn't believe it. After all, they had never seen a person who fell from the sky and survived. Some said that the young man was actually an immortal that descended to the mortal world. In an instant, many people in the village rushed to Zhangji's smithy to see what the young man looked like. However, they were all stunned by old Zhang's daughter, Chuehua. She took out a small stool and sat down at the door with a hammer in her hand. Inside the house, old Zhang had already cleaned the blood off the man. The only doctor in the village, Dr. Lin, wrapped the man like a dumpling with a white cloth. Old Zhang looked nervously at the old man in green who was carrying a medicine box. "Old Lin, how is it? Is there any hope? Did this person really fall from the sky?" Dr. Lin did not answer the question. "I'm not too sure." Old Zhang shook his head. "I was scared out of my wits. I didn't see it clearly at all. Just tell me if he can survive. This young man is seriously injured. I believe you saw it for yourself. His body is covered in wounds. Some of the wounds even penetrated his heart and lungs." Hearing this, old Zhang's face was also full of shock. When he took off the other party's clothes, he was also shocked. The densely packed wounds were like broken wine bottles. "I've been a doctor for decades, but this is the first time I've seen such a tenacious life force. Now, we can only rely on his luck." Dr. Lin stroked his beard. After a moment of silence, he said, "I don't recommend that you save him. Even if he can be cured with such serious injuries, you can't imagine the cost. If it was someone else, I definitely wouldn't be so generous. But who asked him to save me?" Old Zhang gritted his teeth and said, "Although I'm an insignificant person, I also know that kindness must be repaid. At most, I'll sell the smithy." Dr. Lin left. From then on, Zhangji's smithy also closed. Old Zhang and his daughter Cui Hua almost never left the young man on the bed. The more they spent, the less their savings. The young man was still unconscious. The rumors about him in the village also gradually dispersed. Everyone felt that he would not live for much longer. "Who are you?" Cui Hua stayed by the bed, holding her chin with her hand. She quietly looked at the young man's facial features. Her gaze was very curious. The latter's handsome features made her blush. In the past few days, she was the one who changed the medicine and gauze for the young man, so she had seen his body thoroughly. When she saw the densely packed wounds on the young man's body, she, who had climbed trees to dig for bird eggs and beat up a group of naughty children until they cried, could not help but cry. "They all said that you fell from the sky. Is that true? How can you be so good-looking? Also, why do you have a head full of white hair at such a young age? What's your name? When are you going to wake up?" This kind of conversation happened frequently in the next few days. Sometimes, it made old Zhang feel that his daughter, who couldn't get married, was possessed. On the 7th day, When Chui Hua went to Dr. Lin's house to get the last dose of topical medicine and returned home, she saw that the bed was empty. She subconsciously turned around and wanted to go out to look for it. She saw a completely naked young man standing at the door of her house. Father, father, he's awake. Come quickly." An ear-piercing voice echoed within a radius of 100 meters, causing the chickens to fly and the dogs to jump. Into this chapter. Chapter 1158. In a simple and crude house, old Zhang and his daughter stared at the young man standing in front of them with their eyes wide open. At this moment, the young man had already changed into a set of incomparably clean robes that were full of patches. It seemed like his figure was a little tall and sturdy, causing the robes to seem a little tight. If one looked closely, the young man's eyes were lifeless. He was standing on the ground in a daze, holding a corn cob in his hands and gnawing on it. "Slow down. They're still." Old Zhang was shocked by his table manners. He looked at his daughter helplessly. "When did he wake up?" "I don't know either." Chui Hua shook her head repeatedly. "Just now, when you were still forging, I went out to find Grandpa Lin to get the medicine. When I came back, I saw him getting out of bed." At this point, she felt her face was still a little hot, and her mind couldn't help but recall the previous scene. In order to conceal her abnormality, she immediately shook her head and discarded the distracting thoughts in her mind. She asked, "Father, his body recovers very quickly. He was previously covered in injuries, but now he's completely healed. There's not even a scar left." "Yeah, I'm curious too." Old Zhang could not figure out either. Old Lin said that the medicinal herbs in the village are limited. The medicine he prescribed is only slightly better than normal medicine for bruises and injuries. Forget it. Let's not think about it anymore. It's a good thing that he's alive. This way, I can also breathe a sigh of relief. Old Zhang shook his head and walked towards the young man who was wolfing down his food. He smiled and said, "Young man, this old man's surname is Zhang. What's your name?" However, the young man only raised his head and smiled at him before lowering his head again to gnaw on the cob in his hand. Maybe I was too presumptuous. Old Zhang didn't think too much about it. Thinking that the other party didn't want to tell him, he asked again, "Can you tell me where your house is, so that we can contact your family?" Hearing the word family, the young man's movement suddenly froze, and a blank look flashed across his empty eyes. Then, he threw away the corn cob in his hand that he had finished eating and shouted at old Zhang, "Hungry! Hungry! My father's asking you. You only know how to eat." Chui Hua was so angry that she subconsciously took a few steps back. She was so scared that the young man took a few steps back. Then, she squatted on the ground and cried bitterly with her hands around her head. "Sorry, I didn't mean to be mean to you." Chui Hua's heart softened. The young man picked up the dusty corn kernels that fell to the ground and threw them into his mouth. He looked very aggrieved. "I'm scared." Chui Hua seemed to have thought of something. Pointing at her own head, she stammered, "Father, he seems to have a problem here. Did he get a concussion?" Old Zhang's expression changed slightly. "Go, invite your Grandpa Lin over. Let him take a look." An hour later, Dr. Lin performed a variety of examinations on the young man, took his pulse, and interrogated him. Under the nervous gazes of old Zhang and his daughter, he stroked his beard and sighed. "If he really fell from the sky, it's very likely that he got a concussion. Can he be saved?" Chui Hua cried out in alarm. Dr. Lin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "I'm just a doctor, not an immortal. In such a situation, unless you can invite the legendary Immortal Master." Immortal Master? Old Zhang was extremely disappointed. They were all ordinary people, putting aside the fact that they had never seen an Immortal Master in their lives. Even if they did, they didn't have the qualifications to invite them. As if sensing their feelings, Dr. Lin comforted them. "Now, we can only hope that he recovers on his own. But you don't have to be like this. Other than the fact that he can't remember the past and his IQ is stuck at a 5-year-old, he's very healthy. I'm worried about how to settle him." Old Zhang smiled bitterly. Although his IQ is the same as a 5-year-old, he's still an adult. An extra mouth. Since you're the one who saved him, then you must bear all of this. Dr. Lin smiled as he picked up the medicine box and left. Since then, there was one more person in Eastjiang village. Everyone knew that the young man who killed the tiger survived. It was said that he was quite handsome, but there seemed to be something wrong with his brain. Some people felt it was a pity, while others discussed, and Zhangji Iron Shop also had one more mouth to eat. No, it was 10 mouths. This was because old Zhang discovered that the young man's appetite was abnormally frightening. An ordinary person could eat 3 bowls of white rice, but the young man ate half a bucket in one meal. Fortunately, Butler Huang kept his promise and sent them money. Other than the 20 taels, there was also half of the money given to them by the tiger hunting squad, which added up to nearly 100 taels. Old Zhang was very clear that even if he had 100 taels of silver, sooner or later he would be broke if he just ate it all away. Left with no choice, he could only use the money he had to buy a few acres of land and 2 cows in the village. Zhangji Iron Shop reopened. The only thing that made old Zhang happy was that the young man he picked up was strong. An ordinary person could only carry a weight of 150 kilograms at a time, but the young man could carry 500 kilograms. From then on, Zhangji Iron Shop had an apprentice who could use a hammer. The farming tools he forged were very sharp, and in a short period of time, Zhangji Iron Shop's business was very good. They even sold their tools to neighboring villages. That was the 10th day that the young man came to Eastjiang village. Old Zhang named him by Ziwang because of his white hair at such a young age. It was also on that day that the vast Central Plains underwent a shocking change. An imperial dynasty called the Great Qin was officially established, and a man called Ing became the ruler of the imperial dynasty. The entire southern region accepted Ing as the ruler, and the largest force in the Central Plains, the Demon region, chose to ally with Ing. The Great Qin dynasty entered the Central Plains, and the Central Plains officially fell into chaos. Many forces attacked the Great Qin, and the 100 Empire War officially began. In the Great Qin dynasty, a young man called the Black Dragon King crazily took revenge on the Great Qin dynasty and destroyed more than 10 subordinate forces of the Great Qin dynasty. A young man in white with an ancient sword on his back crossed the border and killed his way into the Tianfeng Sea area, causing the emperor of the Great Li, Shang Wudao, to flee in panic, and causing 2 emperors' throne cultivators to fight the Ahuang Kingdom of the Eastern Wilderness and the Shi family of the ancient clan sealed off the Tianfeng Sea area. The empress of the Great Li dynasty, Yin Yi, sealed off the Tianfeng Sea area and declared war on the Great Li dynasty. The Great Li dynasty was surrounded by enemies, and all these changes had no effect on Eastjiang village. The people continued to live their lives of working at sunrise and resting at sunset. The only effect was that the Great Kuan dynasty, which Eastjiang village belonged to, was also forced to participate in the war. There was a great conscription in the country, and every village was sent to every household. Even the young men of Eastjiang village were no exception. The county government sent out troops to forcibly transfer them, and those who disobeyed were killed without mercy. Zhangji Iron Shop was also affected. As a young man, Bai Ziwang should have been exiled as well. However, the whole village testified that Bai Ziwang was a fool, and after old Zhang secretly gave the conscription officer 20 taels of silver, he was finally let off. Even so, Bai Ziwang joined the team of repairing the plank road with the village's elderly who could move. Into this chapter. Chapter 1159. Bai Ziwang, Big Blockhead, Big Rice Bucket. Bai Ziwang, Big Blockhead, Big Rice Bucket. Bai Ziwang, Big Blockhead, Big Rice Bucket. At the entrance of Zhangji's iron shop, a group of children were jumping and singing nursery rhymes while pointing at the dazed Bai Ziwang. Some people even threw rotten vegetable leaves at him. Bai Ziwang scratched his head and giggled. A group of little bastards scrammed for this old lady. At this time, a tall and sturdy woman holding a broom rushed out. She looked very fierce. The laughing and scolding group of children immediately scattered in fright. As they ran, they cursed, Zhang Chuihua, female Yiksha, Kalwa, little bastard, don't run. Chuihua held the broom and chased after them. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. When she returned to the entrance of her house, she saw the youth sitting at the entrance and giggling. She became angry and said, "You idiot, you can still laugh after being scolded." After she finished scolding him, she remembered why she was bickering with him. Her expression softened and she said, "Hungry? I'll go cook for you." Inside the house, there were 2 dishes and a soup on the table. There were 2 steamed buns in the bowl and half a bucket of rice. Seeing Bai Ziwang wolfing down his food, Chui Hua couldn't help but carefully wipe his mouth. She said, "Blockhead, can you eat a bit slower? No one is going to steal from you." Although old Zhang named the youth Bai Ziwang, Chui Hua felt that it was a mouthful and just called him Blockhead. Old Zhang silently looked at all of this. He didn't move his chopsticks and sighed with worry. Chui Hua said, "Father, what's wrong? There's a war again." Old Zhang sighed softly. "I heard that many people died in this battle. Many people lost their homes and lost their homes. Famine has begun to spread everywhere. Rebels have appeared among the victims. It is said that the rebels have already reached the county." At this point, he couldn't help but look at the youth who was holding the bucket and eating. He shook his head again. Now there is a shortage of food everywhere. Money has depreciated. If we continue to eat like this, in less than a month, our whole family will have nothing to eat. Then what should we do? Chui Hua suddenly panicked. "Father, it's not like you don't know. Blockhead has been repairing the plank road for the past few days. They only gave him porridge to eat. After a few days, he has lost weight. What else can we do? I just hope that the war won't affect us." Old Zhang shook his head. "Tomorrow, I'll go to the mountains to pick some wild vegetables and catch some game. I'll make them into dried goods and store them for emergencies. I'll eat less in the future and give my share to Blockhead." After saying that, Chui Hua took out a handkerchief and very carefully wiped the soup stains on the corner of the young man's mouth. Old Zhang's face twitched slightly. He hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask, "Do you like this silly boy?" "Father, what are you talking about?" Chui Hua's face turned red and she buried her head. "There are no outsiders in the room. Why can't you say it?" Old Zhang did not intend to let her go. "I'm already in my 50s this year. I don't have many years left to live. The person I'm most worried about is you. Your mother died early. Although I was the one who raised you, you matured much earlier than your peers. You started to learn to cook, do housework, do farm work, and even help me forge iron when you were only 6 or 7 years old." At this point, old Zhang looked ashamed. "Outsiders say that you're more capable than the average man. As your father, I don't feel good when I hear it. Because it's precisely because of this that your happiness has been delayed." "Father," Chui Hua's eyes were slightly red. "Listen to me." Old Zhang interrupted her and sternly said, "You're going to be 22 soon. It's impossible to be single forever. Father can't accompany you for a lifetime. Since you like this silly boy, then we might as well set a date for the 2 of you to get married." "Oh, what? Do you think I haven't seen that you like this silly boy these days?" Old Zhang glared at her. Then, with a complicated expression, he looked at the youth who was eating and said, "Although this silly boy is silly and eats a lot, if it was in the past, I would definitely not agree." He paused for a moment. His eyebrows were full of lethargy. "But now there are military disasters everywhere. It would be dangerous for you to marry a normal person without any ability. It's better to marry this silly boy. At least he won't be sent to the front lines. Then I'll listen to father," Chui Hua said in a low voice with a red face. "I've calculated the date for you. The 6th day of next month is an auspicious day. In other words, there's still half a month." Old Zhang seemed to have already prepared it. He continued to arrange. "When the time comes, we'll set up 2 tables and invite the villagers to a meal." On that day, the news of Zhang Ji's ironworks wedding spread throughout the village. After knowing that Chui Hua was going to marry a fool, the entire village thought that old Zhang had gone crazy. Old Zhang did not explain. He smiled and went from house to house to inform them of the date. He even gave some money to the official in charge of supervising the repair of the plank road and asked for 3 days of leave for Bai Ziwang on the day of the wedding. Seeing that it was hopeless to persuade old Zhang, the entire village could only accept it. In this turbulent era, being able to witness a couple of newlyweds was a happy event. What everyone did not know was that there was an invisible killing intent slowly approaching them in the darkness. In the great Kuan dynasty that East Zhang village belonged to, A man wearing a dragon robe sat absent-mindedly on the dragon throne. He looked at the battle report in his hand and murmured, "Defeated." The 800,000-strong army was defeated. Below him stood many courtiers. They all had their heads lowered and were trembling in fear, not saying a single word. In the past half a month, the newly established Great Qin dynasty had gathered the strength of the southern region and entered the central state with the help of the demon region. They fought against the attacks of the three great imperial dynasties and many holy lands. Even so, the Great Qin dynasty fought and won. Especially after the emperor of the Great Qin dynasty broke through to the emperor's throne realm, the flames of war intensified. Dynasties and empires were destroyed almost every day. As a force under the Great Qin imperial dynasty, the Great Qin dynasty naturally had to participate in the war against the forces under the Great Qin dynasty. However, in the past half a month, they had suffered continuous defeats. There was even civil unrest in the country. The disaster victims formed a rebel army and caused chaos everywhere. "Your Majesty," after a while, a general could not help but say, "The Daluo dynasty's army under the Great Qin dynasty has already reached our Great Qin territory's Lin prefecture. What should we do now?" Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. To the north of Lin prefecture was the territory conquered by the enemy nation. To the south was 2/3 of Great Qin's territory. In other words, the enemy nation had already conquered 1/3 of their territory. It had only been half a month. An official said weakly, "Why don't we surrender? It seems like the Great Qin imperial dynasty is finished. We might as well surrender to the Great Qin dynasty. That way, we might still have a chance of survival." As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body suddenly split into a few pieces. The entire hall was dead silent. Surrender? This is what happens to those who dare to betray the Great Qin imperial dynasty. As a gloomy voice rang out in the hall, a black-clothed man descended. Emperor of Great Qin stood up subconsciously. "Greetings, envoy. By the order of the Great Qin Emperor, I order you to gather all the spirit veins in the country and set up the 10,000 ghost soul devourer array in Lin prefecture to slaughter the 1 million people in Lin prefecture." The man in black's sinister voice resounded in the hall. The 10,000 ghost soul devourer array fused with 1 million dead souls will definitely deal a heavy blow to the Great Qin dynasty. What? Emperor of Great Qin's hair stood on end. Slaughter the 1 million people. P.S. Chapter 4, updated for today. Don't think it's a stretch. This is the best point I can think of to enter the central state. Only this way can we find the female lead and the others quickly. End of this chapter. Chapter 1160. Time flew by, and several days passed in the blink of an eye. In these few days, the greatest change in East Zhang village was that every family was preparing for funerals. The elderly cried, and the women and children despaired. The war was too tragic. The Great Qin dynasty had been beaten back by the enemy, the Daluo dynasty. None of the people from East Zhang village who had been captured and sent to the front lines had returned alive. The escalation of the war also caused the price of grain to rise and the value of money to depreciate. In the past, 1 jin of rice cost 20 copper coins, but now it had increased tenfold to 200 copper coins. Even so, tens of thousands of people still fought over it. Even East Zhang village was no exception. It wasn't that no one thought of escaping to a safe place, but it was said that the rebel army had already reached the prefecture. Moreover, most of the people in East Zhang village were old and weak, women and children who were unwilling or unable to leave their homeland. Steward Wu is still the smart one. He noticed something was wrong and reminded me to buy a house in the capital. Once the war reaches here, I'll move my family there. But this is also a good thing. At least before I leave, I can still make a fortune. East Zhang village's richest man, Zhang Yuan, smiled as he looked at the long line of people waiting in front of his house just to buy grain. He sold the moldy, worm-ridden old rice from his warehouse at 300 copper coins per jin. He wasn't afraid that no one would buy it. Old Zhang was also in the line. He'd spent all his savings to buy a bag of rice. Before leaving, He glared fiercely at Zhang Yuanwei's fat body and cursed in a low voice. "Pa, a bastard who makes a fortune during a national crisis will die a horrible death." At the entrance of Zhang Ji Ironworks, a white-haired youth dressed in coarse clothes sat in a daze. Chui Hua, who was wearing women's clothes for the first time, stood behind him and gently combed his long hair with a comb. It could be said that the white-haired youth was the least affected in all of East Zhang village. He ate and slept every day. After the marriage was confirmed, old Zhang treated him as family. He knew that he had a large appetite and would rather eat chaff for himself and his daughter to save a portion of their rations. As Chui Hua combed his long hair, she murmured, "Blockhead, do you really not remember who you are?" She did not know how many times she had tried this, but she did not get a response from the young man every time. "Who am I?" However, this time, the white-haired young man's body trembled slightly. He seemed to have asked a question instead, and a hint of confusion flashed in his eyes. "You remember?" Chui Hua's hands froze. Then, she walked in front of him and nervously sized up his handsome face. "Who am I?" the white-haired young man asked again. His eyes began to struggle, as if he were in pain. Then, he held his head with both hands and began to scream. His change immediately frightened Chui Hua. The latter hurriedly comforted him. "If you can't remember, then don't think about it. If you can't remember, then don't think about it." Plop! The youth fell to the ground and fainted on the spot. Old Zhang, who came back with a bag of rice, immediately rushed over. "What happened to him?" "Father, Blockhead seems to have remembered something, but it's very painful." Chui Hua's eyes were red. "Give me a hand. Quickly carry him in." In the next few days, old Zhang tried to make the white-haired young man remember the past. However, every time he mentioned it, the white-haired young man would scream as if he was possessed. In the end, old Zhang simply stopped asking, and the young man also returned to normal. However, every day, he would sit at the door, either in a daze or writing something on the ground with a branch. "Father, what word did Blockhead write?" Chui Hua called old Zhang out and pointed to a word on the ground. "It seems to be a simplified version of Mo." Old Zhang said uncertainly. He had only studied in a private school for 2 years and did not know many words. "What does Mo mean?" "I don't know either." Half a month, for everyone in Dongzhang village, was extremely difficult because the days were getting more and more difficult. However, for the white-haired young man, it was like a dream. In this chaotic world, for everyone, the better news was that it was said that the rebel army in the county had been wiped out. Some people tried to move south, but found that the entire Lin and county had set up checkpoints everywhere, not allowing people to move around. Even Zhang Yuanwei of Dongzhang village was no exception. Some people tried to break through the checkpoints, but in exchange, they were killed on the spot. The official statement to the outside world was to strictly investigate the enemy spies and spies. Lin and County, Prefectural Prime Minister's Mansion. Prefectural Prime Minister Lu Zun knelt on the ground and respectfully said to an old eunuch in front of him, "This lowly official greets Eunuch Wang. Lord Lu, this time I'm patrolling incognito. I'm here to convey the imperial edict to you by the emperor's order." An old eunuch with a fair face and no beard smiled, then handed the imperial edict in his hand to Lu Ziyuan. "I won't read it. It's all on it, and only Lord Lu can read it. Don't leak it." Lu Ziyuan got up and took the imperial edict with both hands. After looking at it carefully, his whole body suddenly stiffened. Thousand ghosts devouring formation. Slaughter the millions of people in my Lin and county. He panted heavily like a bellows, and his eyes were full of disbelief. That was the lives of millions of people. More importantly, it was the people under his jurisdiction. "Lord Lu, His Majesty has high hopes for you. I believe that you will not let him down." The old eunuch walked over and patted his shoulder lightly. "In order to show his favor to you, His Majesty has just sent people to bring your family to the capital city. It could be considered as being away from the chaos of war and basking in the Emperor's grace." Lu Thuan's mind was buzzing, as though he was struck by lightning. His eyes became bloodshot, and his whole body trembled. After a few seconds, he knelt down heavily with his trembling body and stammered, I accept the imperial edict. Very good. The old eunuch smiled and nodded. In order to cooperate with Lord Liu, I've brought someone this time. He will definitely be able to get twice the result with half the effort. As his voice fell, a black shadow suddenly appeared in the enclosed room. Lord Liu, this is Lord Sual from the Fallen Spirits sect. You must listen to his arrangements. At the same time, make arrangements for the 100,000 troops and do not leak the news. North of Lin County, 1,000 miles away. Amidst the endless flags, there was a huge tent. In the tent, there were several figures with strong auras sitting upright. Everyone, the one standing in our way now, is the great Kuan dynasty's Lin County. A man in armor pointed at the huge sand map and said with assurance, although Lin County is only a county with a population of only 1 million, it is the throat of the great Kuan kingdom. We must occupy this place before we can directly attack the capital of the great Kuan kingdom. The others nodded repeatedly when faced with his analysis, and a gray-robed old man frowned and said, it's only a county. Why don't we launch an attack right now? There's no rush. We, the Zenith Heaven Immortal Realm, are only here to assist in the battle. All military plans will have to go according to the Great Qin Envoy's arrangements. The armored man shook his head slightly. If nothing goes wrong, the Lord Emissary will send the order to attack before tomorrow night. Someone could not help but laugh. General Yang, what do you think the Great Qin will reward us if we, the Zenith Heaven Immortal, destroy the Great Kuan? I don't know about that. The armored man shook his head and laughed. But one thing is for sure. Based on how the Great Qin treats others, they will definitely not treat us badly. At this moment, a messenger walked into the tent and knelt on one knee. General Yang, the Lord Emissary has a special mission for me to convey to you. After saying that, he took out a portrait from his bosom. General Yang took it and opened it. The person in the portrait was a young man with deep eyes and a dignified look on his face. The most eye-catching thing about him was his head of white hair. Everyone in the tent was puzzled. General Yang frowned and looked at the kneeling messenger. Does the Lord Emissary have anything else to say? The Lord Emissary said that if we encounter the person in the portrait, we must report to him. The messenger did not dare to hide anything and said slowly, it is said that this order was personally issued by the Great Qin Emperor. Anyone who knows about it will be greatly rewarded. Everyone in the room gasped in shock. The Great Qin Emperor, greatly rewarded. You may leave. After the messenger left, General Yang took a deep breath and his eyes flickered. Why is the Emperor looking for this person? End of this chapter. Chapter 1161. The next day, the 6th day of the 5th month of the lunar calendar. The gloomy East Zhang village finally had a hint of liveliness. The Zhang family smithy was going to hold a wedding. East Zhang village had already known about this so-called wedding half a month ago. Old Zhang was going to marry his daughter to a fool he picked up from the streets. In the past, the villagers might have talked about it as a joke. However, under the dark clouds of war, no one had the mood to do so. Many people were already hungry. Now that the Zhang family was going to hold a wedding, they would definitely hold a banquet. Therefore, the villagers went to the Zhang family to help. They were busy until nighttime. There were a few red lanterns hanging at the entrance of the Zhang family smithy. Coupled with some laughter, it looked like a wedding. Old Zhang's original plan was to hold 3 to 5 tables. However, when he thought that everyone's life was not easy, he gritted his teeth and held 10 tables. However, the food on each table was not very sumptuous. There were a few plates of wild vegetables and a bowl of soup with oil visible. Even so, many of the originally pale villagers ate their fill. After the meal, some children formed groups to play, shouting that they wanted to make a scene in the bridal chamber. The white-haired young man was wearing a clean green shirt with a red flower hanging on his chest. He was surrounded by many children and only cared about giggling. The villagers wanted to tell him to treat the woman well in the future. However, when they thought of the former's IQ, they did not bother to say anything. Old Zhang did not mind. After the crowd dispersed, he dragged the white-haired young man into the house and said with a complicated expression, "Do you know what to do when you go in? Sleep." The white-haired young man said happily. Old Zhang wanted to say something, but in the end he sighed softly. Forget it, go in. I'm hungry. The white-haired young man hurriedly shook his head. Get in. You can eat tomorrow. Old Zhang was so angry that he directly pushed him into the newly decorated room. Then, ignoring the young man's resistance, he forcefully locked the door from the outside. Mother of the child, you can rest in peace. Old Zhang wiped his tears, picked up a blanket, and walked into the smithy. He took out the fruit wine that he brewed himself and drank it in one gulp. Under such a hazy moonlight, the entire Lin and county set off a silent bloody massacre. The 100,000-strong army was divided into many small teams and rushed to dozens of small villages under the county. The cold blades cut through the throats and pierced into the warm, innocent bodies outside Lin and county. In the midst of the dense torches, a newly built huge altar could be vaguely seen. The altar was about 1,000 square meters, and there were all kinds of strange runes drawn on it. The area below the altar was filled with spiritual energy. The spiritual qi was so dense that it was almost liquefied, and one could vaguely see streams of dragon-shaped airflow supporting the entire altar. In the middle of the altar, there were a dozen gloomy men in black robes, chanting something. The black-robed old man in the lead of the altar pinched his fingers lightly, his expression constantly changing. The person beside him asked, "Senior brother, what's wrong?" The black-robed old man frowned. "In order to complete this 1,000-spirit devourer formation, I'm afraid we need a ferocious spirit as the main spirit." "Ferocious spirit?" One of the black-robed men replied. "The people we kill are at most souls of the dead. A ferocious spirit needs to have a great amount of resentment. It's best if it's a person with the 8 characters of the horoscope and the weather tonight." "That's right. It's best if it's a woman." Someone else replied. "Women are of the Yin attribute, and they're dressed in red. If they were to undergo the concoction of the fallen spirit's sect, they would be able to give birth to a ferocious spirit." The black-robed old man pondered for a long time before giving his orders. "Pass down my orders. If any of the villages see any women dressed in red, bring them all here. Dongzhang village, in the dead of night." Every household had their doors tightly shut. Apart from the red lanterns hanging outside Zhang Yuanwei and Zhang Ji's smithy, the entire Dongzhang village was in a state of silence. Inside Zhang Yuanwei's mansion, dozens of black shadows appeared in the darkness of the night. All of them leaped up at the same time, climbing the walls and leaping into the mansion. Plop, plop, plop. The darkness of the night was filled with the glaring gleam of a blade. One by one, corpses fell to the ground as the pungent smell of blood permeated the air. Within a few breaths of time, the entire mansion, including the servants and the guards, were all dead. "Old Master, you've hurt me. Old Master Spirit is almost lost because of you." At this point, from the largest room, a faint sound of pain and numbness could be heard. More than a dozen black shadows silently moved forward to meet them. Within the huge room, the fat man, Zhang Yuanwei, was hugging a woman dressed in red, panting heavily. "Little Xiang, or if you can give Old Master a baby this time, Old Master will give you a title. Old Master still needs to buy you a lot of high-quality rouge and face powder. Old Master doesn't lack money." Just as this voice was about to reach its climax, a bright curved blade pierced through the curtains and sliced Zhang Yuanwei's neck. Blood flowed like a fountain. The woman on the bed was scared out of her wits. Another blade slashed towards her, but it was stopped by someone. "Don't kill her, bring her back." This scene seemed to be playing out in every house in Dongzhang village. The dark red color of blood rippled in the night. In Zhang Ji iron shop, several men dressed in black approached like ghosts, their shining blades piercing through the darkness. Child's mother. In the simple wooden shed, the drunken old Zhang had already fallen asleep, mumbling as if he was sleep-talking. "What's that sound?" One of the men in black stopped in his tracks, then turned around and walked step by step towards the wooden shed on the side. At this moment, a black cat suddenly jumped out of the wooden shed, letting out an ear-piercing cry as it fled in panic. "So it's a stray cat." The man let out a sigh of relief. then turned around to look at the brightly lit house, and said in a low voice, "There's only one left." In the simple and crude bridal room, the oil lamp was bright. Chui Hua, who had long since put on a red wedding dress, quietly looked at the white-haired youth who was eating a piece of cake in front of her. Her slightly delicate and pretty facial features had a touch of captivating red. When the white-haired youth finished eating the cake in his hand, she couldn't help but reach out to wipe the corner of his mouth and softly said, "Are you full? Hungry?" The white-haired youth looked at her anxiously. Chui Hua was immediately annoyed and unhappily said, "Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. Don't you know what day it is tonight?" "Hungry," the youth said in a low and muffled voice, then got up, obviously wanting to go out to find food. "Don't move first." Chui Hua immediately pressed him down and fiercely said, "Listen to me for a few words. I'll find something for you to eat." The white-haired youth obediently sat down, very obedient. End of this chapter. Chapter 1162. Puffed. Looking at his simple and honest appearance, Chui Hua could not help but laugh. Then, she reached out and gently caressed his face. "Blockhead, do you know? Although I'm not clear about your identity and origin, I know that you are definitely not an ordinary person." Her eyes were full of gentleness. "At most, I can be considered a village girl. I have no experience, and I am not good-looking. Apart from having strength, it can be said that I have nothing good about me. I am not worthy of you. But I really like you. Outsiders say that you are stupid, but in my opinion, you are stupid to the point of being cute." At this point, a sense of inferiority emerged in her eyes. "I'm not tired of being with you at all. I admit that I am a little selfish, but don't worry, I will find a way with Father to restore your memory." Hungry, the white-haired youth began to protest. Okay, I will go out and find food for you. I don't know if Father is asleep." She wiped away her tears and smiled sweetly. Then, she got up and walked toward the door. In the end, she found that the door could not be pushed open at all. It was as if it was locked. "Father, are you asleep? Open the door for me." Chui Hua shook the door and shouted. Boom! At that moment, the tightly closed door suddenly shattered. She, along with the broken pieces of the door, fell heavily to the ground. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More than 10 black figures jumped in. Each of them held a shining, curved blade in their hands. Their bodies were bathed in the pungent smell of blood. "Who are you people?" Chui Hua could not care about the sharp pain in her hand. She subconsciously got up and looked at them with fear. The red-clothed woman? The eyes of the leading black-clothed man focused. Then he scanned the inside of the house. His gaze fell on the white-haired man at the side. "Take this woman away. Kill the man." Following his order, someone held a curved blade and walked towards the white-haired man with large strides. The white-haired man immediately shouted in fear. "You dare!" Seeing this scene, Chui Hua's expression changed slightly. She did not know where the courage came from, but she stood in front of the white-haired man. She casually grabbed a stick and waved it with all her might. The man immediately stopped his steps. "Do it!" The leading black-clothed man coldly snorted. "Who are you people?" At this time, a drunken, questioning voice came from outside the door. Surprisingly, old Zhang, who was sleeping in the wooden shed, was awakened by the sound of the door breaking. What he got in response was a sharp saber light. Old Zhang's hair stood on end as he instinctively dodged in a panic. Even so, his right arm was chopped off by the saber, and the piercing pain completely woke him up. "Dad!" Chui Hua, who witnessed this scene, burst into tears. Taking advantage of this gap, a black-clothed man instantly got close to her and knocked the stick out of her hand. Then he grabbed it. "You bastards, let go of my daughter!" Old Zhang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He grabbed an axe by the door and rushed in. Bang! However, his entire body was kicked away. "Kill them all and burn the house." The leading black-clothed man ignored Chui Hua's resistance and walked out of the room. His incomparably indifferent voice sounded. "Kill!" A black-clothed man held a scimitar and slashed at the white-haired man who was yelling. In his opinion, facing such ordinary people, he could split them in half with one slash. Let me go, Blockhead dead. I beg you, don't kill Blockhead and my dad." Chui Hua struggled with all her might and cried bitterly. Old Zhang had lost a lot of blood. He struggled to stand up, but he found that he could not muster any strength at all. He could only watch as a saber landed on the white-haired youth's body. Clang, with an ear-piercing sound of metal colliding. The incomparably sharp saber did not hurt the white-haired youth at all. Instead, a gap appeared on the edge of the saber. How is this possible? The black-clothed man's face was full of disbelief. His saber was forged in the army. It was unknown how many enemies' heads had been chopped off. Even if the opponent's body was made of stone, there should at least be a crack. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. The white-haired youth shrank in the corner and trembled as he shouted. The rest of the people also noticed that something was wrong. With a loud bang, they swarmed up, and more than a dozen sharp sabers slashed at the white-haired youth. Clang, clang, clang. With a burst of sparks, more than a dozen people were shocked to find that the sabers in their hands were all broken, and the white-haired youth in front of them was still unharmed. This time, even Cui Hua and Old Zhang, who had already lost all hope, were shocked. The black-clothed man who was the leader outside the house narrowed his eyes and immediately said, "There's something wrong with this person. We can't stay for long. Go." He had lived in the army for a long time and had heard that there were cultivators who specialized in training their bodies and were invulnerable. He did not expect to meet one today. The dozen or so people had long been scared out of their wits and rushed out in a hurry. The black-clothed man, who was the leader, grabbed Cui Hua and was about to leave. However, Old Zhang rushed over and hugged his feet tightly. "You're not allowed to leave. Let go of my daughter. Old thing, get lost." The black-clothed man wanted to shake him off, but found that Old Zhang was hugging him tightly and would not let go no matter what. "Kill him! Quickly kill him!" He roared again and again. Immediately after, someone slashed at Old Zhang's back with a saber, and blood immediately splashed everywhere. The white-haired youth who was originally shouting in the house suddenly quieted down when he saw this scene. There was a strong struggle in his eyes. "Father!" Cui Hua screamed at the top of her lungs. "Don't kill my father! Don't kill my father! Blockhead, quickly, quickly save my father!" However, Old Zhang still tightly hugged the black-clothed man's leg and said word by word, Let go of my daughter." Another few slashes were slashed down, directly cutting off Old Zhang's hands and feet. His flesh and blood were a mess. "Father!" Cui Hua almost fainted. The white-haired youth suddenly hugged his head and screamed. Countless scenes emerged in his mind like a tide. "Go, quickly go." The black-clothed man, who was the leader, directly knocked Cui Hua out, jumped, and directly disappeared into the darkness. The remaining dozen or so people lit torches and threw more than 10 torches into the house. Suddenly, a monstrous fire was ignited. In the raging fire, the white-haired youth was still hugging his head and screaming. The surrounding hot flames did not cause him any harm. "Blockhead! I'm a blockhead!" "No, I'm not a blockhead." The white-haired youth tried his best to digest the memories in his mind. "Who am I? I'm Yi Chun. I'm the mad southern immortal. I'm Mad Southern Yi." Subsequently, he was no longer in pain, and he no longer screamed. His blank eyes gradually became clear. "I remember now. I'm Yi Chun. I disregarded the restriction of true origin energy and forcefully performed the true spirit 9 transformations. I transformed into the ancient demonic ape and fought against 6 martial saints. I was ambushed by an emperor's throne powerhouse." End of this chapter. Chapter 1163. Outside the house, more than 10 men in black sneered as they looked at the raging fire in front of them. Even if this person has a powerful body, he can't be afraid of fire, can he? That's right, unless he's a god. However, just as they were about to leave, the scene that greeted them shocked them to death. The raging fire that seemed to be able to devour everything suddenly split apart as if it had a life of its own. A white-haired young man slowly stepped out of the air. The first thing that everyone saw was the white-haired young man's pupils. Then they screamed and retreated a few steps, covering their eyes. They saw 2 balls of golden flames in the white-haired young man's pupils. The flames burned in his eyes, as if they were looking at 2 small suns at close range. "Why are you a human or a ghost?" A man in black looked at Yi Chun in fear and said while trembling, "Kill him." The rest of them braced themselves and charged forward. At the next moment, however, they realized that they could not move their bodies as if they had been immobilized. Yichen walked slowly to old Zhang's side. He lowered his head and looked at the bloody man who was only breathing weakly. A complicated expression flashed through his eyes as he could not help but recall the scenes that had happened since he woke up. Those scenes were like a dream. Although it was only a short month, it seemed like an endless cycle of reincarnation. If you go with the flow, you'll become immortal, and if you go against the flow, you'll become an immortal. Thanks to you guys, I've comprehended the concept of becoming immortal again. Yichen sighed softly and waved his sleeve. A large amount of spiritual energy in his body surged into old Zhang's body. If one took a closer look, it was not just spiritual energy, but also a faint concept. This concept seemed to be the law of heaven and earth. Under the horrified gazes of the men in black who were frozen, old Zhang's severed limbs began to regenerate at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wounds on his body quickly scabbed. "I am not dead?" Old Zhang, who had woken up, was both surprised and confused. He could not help but say when he saw Yichen standing before him, "In Blockhead, are you all right?" "Old man, my name is Yichen." Yichen smiled lightly. "Why Yichen?" Old Zhang was slightly stunned. He then looked at Yichen in disbelief. "Why, you remember?" In his eyes, Yichen's gaze was no longer dull. It was extremely deep, like a bottomless abyss. "Not bad," Yichen said. "Thank you for taking care of me these days." For some reason, in that instant, old Zhang felt an indescribable sense of disappointment. He didn't have time to think too much and begged bitterly, "Save. Quickly save Chuehua." "Of course." Yichen nodded lightly and turned around to look at the dozen or so men in black before him. Red lightning flashed in his eyes. Great Qin Dynasty, 100 Dynasty War, Great Kuan Dynasty, Lin County, 10,000 ghost soul-devouring array. Countless information surged into his mind, and traces of murderous aura appeared between his brows. In order to set up such a sinister formation, you didn't hesitate to slaughter millions of people. "Good, very good. Old man, let's go. I'll bring you there. I know where they are." Yichen lifted his head slowly and looked at old Zhang. Old Zhang subconsciously looked at the dozen or so men in black next to him. What about them? Under his terrified gaze, the bodies of the dozen or so people suddenly burst into flames. Then, they turned into countless specks of light that looked like fireflies and scattered everywhere. "Let's go." Yichen waved his sleeve. Amidst old Zhang's exclamation, he carried him 5 kilometers away with a single step. 100 kilometers away, a man in black grabbed a woman and fled frantically. Too long and the rest didn't catch up. It seems like they're dead. Thinking to this point, he rushed even more desperately. When he finally arrived at the meeting point, he saw that there were already dozens of men in black gathered there. Each of them was holding a woman in red. Someone asked suspiciously, "Officer Ding, why are you alone? Where are the others?" "Run, run quickly," Officer Ding shuddered. An old man in black said in a deep voice, "Speak clearly. Why are you running? Could it be that the enemy is attacking?" The former immediately told him everything that had happened to Yichen. "If it's really as you said, this person must be a cultivator, and he's at the innate stage." The old man in black's expression turned grim as he sneered. "However, so what if that's the case? With me here, I'll be able to kill him." At the next moment, 2 figures suddenly walked out of the void. Officer Ding was scared out of his wits when he saw the white-haired Yichen. It's him, it's him!" Tearing space. The old man in black's expression changed drastically as he inhaled sharply. This person can actually tear space apart. He must be an Emperor stage cultivator. He took out a rescue talisman and shot into the sky as he thought to this point. Then, he looked at Yichen and threatened, "Senior, the Divine Wind Sect, a grade 9 sect of Dakuan, is guarding 50 kilometers away from here. I hope you won't." Bang, bang, bang. Dozens of bloody mists exploded in the air. Yichen grabbed through the air and grabbed the unconscious Tsuhua over. He handed it to old Zhang. Then, he grabbed through the air. Countless spiritual energy gathered into a golden sword in his hand. Take this sword back with you. It can protect your safety. If you encounter any danger, just say the word, and I can kill all living beings within a radius of 3,000 meters. I'll come back for you guys after I'm done." With that, he headed straight for the Divine Wind sect. Old Zhang was stunned on the spot. He stared blankly at Yi Chen's retreating figure. The shock in his heart could not dissipate even now. What kind of person did the father and daughter save? The Grade 9 sect, the Divine Wind sect, was one of the few Grade 9 sects in the entire Daquan dynasty. The sect had over 10,000 disciples, countless resources, and 3 martial saints. At this moment, within the Divine Wind sect, the Divine Wind sect's sect master leaped into the air and frowned as he looked at the fireworks that exploded in the sky. A rescue talisman? Could it be that the powerhouses of the Daluo dynasty have arrived? Right at this moment, a white-haired man descended from the sky. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and his gaze was terrifying. "Who are you?" The Divine Wind sect's sect master's pupils constricted. Subsequently, 2 old figures tore through the air and arrived. They were the only 2 martial saints left in the Divine Wind sect. Seeing that the young man did not say a word, the Divine Wind sect's sect master shouted, "How dare you barge into my Divine Wind sect? Leave your life here." A huge hand suddenly appeared in the air. It turned into 1,000 meters tall and descended from the sky, directly drowning the entire Divine Wind sect. Tens of thousands of disciples died. Even the 3 martial saints, including the Divine Wind sect's sect master, were destroyed. He killed a sect with a raise of his hand. Yi Chen's expression was extremely calm. He turned around and rushed toward Lannan County. The killing intent in his eyes intensified. He was going to massacre Daquan today. End of this chapter. Chapter 1164. East Zhang Village, Zhangji Iron Shop's entrance. The original iron shop had long since been buried in the fire, leaving behind only ruins and the pungent smell of smoke. Old Zhang knelt on the ground as if he had lost his soul. Beside him lay the unconscious Cui Hua. On the way back with his daughter, he saw corpses all along the way. Countless houses were buried in the fire. Dead, they're all dead. Old Zhang tightly held the golden sword in his hand, his body trembling nonstop. More than 300 people in East Zhang Village, regardless of whether they were men or women, old or young, were all killed by the mysterious group of black-clothed men. Not a single person was left alive. Zhang Yuanwai's death was not to be regretted. The only thing that made him sad was old Yuan, who sold bamboo baskets in the east of the village, Shi Jin, who liked to come and drink wine, and the widow next door, whose man died in the army. Those familiar faces were now nothing but cold corpses, which kept pounding into his mind. Old Zhang, who was over 50 years old, had sleepy eyes. He actually hugged his head, squatted down, and cried bitterly. What do we do wrong? Why do we have to suffer like this? He bent his legs and knelt on the ground. East Zhang Village was his home, but now his home was no longer there. Those distant relatives and neighbors of the past were all dead, leaving only the father and daughter. At this time, an incomparably weak voice came from behind him. "Father!" Old Zhang hurriedly wiped his tears and turned to look at Cui Hua, who had just woken up. He squeezed out a stiff smile from his face. "Daughter, are you all right?" Cui Hua seemed to be at a loss. After looking around, a trace of clarity returned to her eyes. "Father, why am I here? Wasn't I taken away by someone? And you, aren't you?" She covered her mouth and looked at old Zhang, her eyes filled with disbelief. She clearly remembered that her father's hands and feet had been cruelly chopped off by that group of people. So why was he standing in front of her now? "Father, where's Blockhead?" A thought suddenly flashed through her mind, and then she suddenly looked at the ruins behind her, her body trembling violently. "Moo! Blockhead!" After saying that, she rushed into the ruins. Old Zhang hurriedly pulled her back and sighed softly. "Your Blockhead is not dead, but then where is he?" "But what?" Faced with Cui Hua's loss of control, old Zhang's heart was slightly stifled. His expression was incomparably complicated as he narrated the events in full detail. After a long while, the night fell into a deathly silence, leaving only the father and daughter facing each other in silence. "Father, you lied to me, didn't you?" Chui Hua felt as if she had been struck by lightning, her mind rumbling endlessly. What did she hear? Not only was her wooden block not burned to death by the fire, but it also recovered its memory and became normal. It even killed those mysterious people and healed her father's limbs. Old Zhang knew that it was hard for her to accept it for a while, so it was worth it to stand aside and wait for her to digest it. In fact, how could he accept it? Even though he had seen everything with his own eyes, he still felt like he was in a dream. In reality, people like Yi Chang were too far away from ordinary people like them. They were so far away that they could only live in the myth that the neighbors bragged about. After an unknown amount of time, Chui Hua sat on the ground with a dazed expression. She bit her lip and said, "Father, you said Blockhead isn't immortal? Maybe." Old Zhang took a deep breath in and subconsciously tightened his grip on the golden sword in his hand. At this moment, the ground began to tremble faintly, as if there were thousands of troops and horses galloping over. Under the father and daughter's terrified expressions, they saw a large number of armored and halberd-wielding troops surging over. Old Zhang instinctively protected his daughter behind him, holding the golden sword tightly in his hand. He did not know if the golden sword could really protect them, but it was their only hope. Enemy. This is the enemy's army. When he saw the armor and black flags worn by the army, Old Zhang became even more nervous. When he was young, he had been to Lin County. On the streets, he had seen the soldiers of the enemy Daluo dynasty being paraded through the streets. The Daluo dynasty's army suddenly stopped. The vanguard pointed at Old Zhang and his daughter. "General, there are people here. Take them down." As an indifferent voice rang out, more than a dozen people rushed toward the father and daughter with a ferocious aura. Old Zhang extended the golden sword in his hand by instinct. His body was trembling as he tried his best to recall the method of use that Yi Chan had told him before he left. "Wait." Right at this moment, an old voice suddenly came from the army. There was a trace of fear in the voice. At the next moment, a purple-clothed old man suddenly leaped out and walked slowly to Old Zhang and his daughter. He stared at the golden sword. "Sir, don't be nervous." Seemingly seeing Old Zhang's nervousness, the purple-clothed old man smiled and said, "I'm from the Daluo dynasty. I won't hurt you commoners. I'm just asking a few simple questions." Old Zhang looked at him warily. The purple-clothed old man was not angry. He took a deep look at the golden sword in his hand and said fearfully, "May I ask who gave you this sword?" He was a member of the Daluo dynasty's martial Saint Mountain, and he had been worshipped by Daluo for generations. This time, he had followed the army to deal with the martial saint of Dakuan. According to common sense, a commoner like Old Zhang wouldn't be able to enter his eyes at all, and he wouldn't let him appear in person. However, it was all because of the golden sword in Old Zhang's hand. It gave him a three-revolution martial saint, a creepy feeling. It seemed to be the might of an emperor's stage. He had a feeling that once Old Zhang activated the golden sword, he and the army of 100,000 behind him would probably be annihilated. That was why he showed up in time to stop it. Old Zhang said in a threatening manner, This was given to me by my son-in-law. Son-in-law." The purple-clothed old man narrowed his eyes. Even though he did not believe Old Zhang's words, he still said, "Sir, you can leave now." With that, he leaped back into the army. "Let's go." The army set off once again. In the eyes of Old Zhang and his daughter, they headed south in an orderly manner. Old Zhang only snapped out of his daze when they were far away. He could not believe that the enemy's army would not kill them. He looked at the golden sword in his hand thoughtfully and subconsciously tightened his grip. Amidst the army, a luxurious carriage was escorted by the crowd as it advanced forward. As a commander of the army, Liang Wu urged his horse forward and rode alongside the carriage. He could not help but ask, "Elder Wu, why did you let those two people go?" Although Liang Wu was the commander-in-chief of this expedition, his tone was very courteous. This was because even the current emperor had to show some respect to the existence in the carriage. It was also the god in their hearts. After a few seconds, The purple-clothed old man's voice came from the carriage. General Liang, did you see the golden sword in that old man's hand? End of this chapter. Chapter 1165. Liang Wu nodded slightly and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Elder Wu, could it be that there's something wrong with that golden sword? This sword has a hint of Emperor's aura. I'm guessing that it belongs to an Emperor's throne expert. The words of the violet-clothed old man caused Liang Wu to be repeatedly shocked in his heart. If all of you had wanted to kill those two earlier and force the golden sword to activate, then I can guarantee that all the living beings in an area of 3 kilometers would have been annihilated, and even I would have died. What? An Emperor's throne strong practitioner? Liang Wu's mind went blank. He knew very well what an Emperor's throne practitioner represented, because in the entire Central Prefecture, every Emperor's throne expert was either the ruler of a country or the leader of a holy land. Even so, there had never been an Emperor's throne expert in the Daluo dynasty and the Great Kuan dynasty since ancient times. An Emperor's throne expert has appeared in the Great Kuan realm. I wonder if it will affect our Zenith Heaven's plan to attack the Great Kuan realm. The purple-robed old man was worried. Then, he changed the topic and said, by the way, I remember that the Great Kuan dynasty's Divine Wind sect is stationed 50 kilometers away from here. Not bad. Liang Wu nodded and said with some fear, Old Wu, should we take a detour? As a grand heavenly immortal, he had also heard rumors about the Divine Wind sect. It was said that this sect was one of the few ninth-grade sects in the Great Kuan realm, and there were even 3 martial saints in the sect. No. The purple-robed old man smiled faintly. 100 years ago, this old man was defeated by the Divine Wind sect's sect master, Feng Baixiu. Since I'm passing by today, this old man would like to experience it for myself. Let's go straight to the Divine Wind sect. An hour later, at the abandoned site of the Divine Wind sect, Liang Wu and the purple-robed old man stared at the ruins in front of them in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. This was because a palm print had appeared in the ruins in front of them. It was as if a giant palm had slammed down from the sky and directly destroyed the entire Divine Wind sect. The Divine Wind sect that had once shaken the Great Kuan and Zenith Heaven realms and was even infamous in the Central Plains had been destroyed. A strong practitioner of the Emperor's throne. He must be a strong practitioner of the Emperor's throne. The purple-robed elder's lips trembled as he muttered, I was right. Only a strong practitioner of the Emperor's throne can destroy a sect. While Liang Wu, who was beside him, was shocked. Wild joy surged into his heart. Looks like this Emperor's throne realm expert has enmity with De Kuan. I wonder who he is? Could it be that Great Qin's Emperor Lord has descended? Less than 500 miles away from Linan County, Yichen stood in the air and sped along the way. Now that he had comprehended the concept of becoming immortal again, other than the lack of quintessential qi in his body, he was no different from a soul-forming stage cultivator. Everywhere he passed, he saw only slaughter, endless slaughter. Regardless of gender, age, or gender, everyone died under the butcher's knife. Even though these people had nothing to do with him, he still saved them in the end. As for the perpetrators, they were all killed by him. Thank you for your kindness, immortal. Countless people in Lin and County knelt down in front of him, mixed with all kinds of helpless cries. Head north and look for an old blacksmith in Eastjiang village. This person can protect you, Yichun said, and suddenly increased his speed. He took a step forward and teleported 5 kilometers away in the blink of an eye. After a few hundred breaths of time, a majestic city came into view. However, the city was already in flames and was filled with dense death energy. Outside the city, a huge altar that covered an area of hundreds of square meters had already been set up. There was a formation set up around the altar. It was like a huge black hole that was crazily tearing at the energy and souls between heaven and earth. At the center of the altar, women in red had their hands and feet tied as they knelt on the ground. Behind them, there were black-robed men with dark energy, torturing them with the cruelest punishment in the world. The great 1,000-ghost devouring formation required ferocious souls to guard it. Ordinary people could only turn into ghosts after death. Therefore, if one wanted to give birth to a ferocious soul, one had to torture the dead while they were alive. That way, the resentment would increase, and only after death would there be a chance to give birth to a ferocious soul. All sorts of incomparably shrill screams resounded between heaven and earth. It was like the roar of thousands of ghosts. It was a ghastly sight. As the women were tortured to death, a black-robed man extracted their souls and said with a frown, "Senior brother, they didn't capture enough women. Only one vengeful spirit was born out of nearly 300 women. If the ferocious soul doesn't come out, how can the great 1,000 ghost-devouring formation be completed?" A black-robed old man's eyes were sinister. His name was Suo Ming, and he was from the Darkhan Dynasty's grade 9 sect, the Fallen Spirits sect. He was also the person who set up the great 1,000 ghost-devouring formation. At this moment, a man walked to his side and whispered, "Sir, we found the person you're looking for. Bring him here." Suo Ming could not help but reveal a look of ecstasy. Immediately after, a few men in black brought a petite girl in white who was only 15 or 16 years old over. The girl's mouth was gagged, and her hands and feet were tied. She could only struggle with all her might, and her beautiful eyes were filled with fear. The moment he saw that person, the expression of Lin and County's deputy minister, Lu Ziyuan, who was standing in the distance like a puppet, changed drastically. "Tong Tong," Lu Ziyuan cried out in disbelief, and then he pounced over frantically. Tong Tong, the girl in front of him, was his only daughter. He got his daughter at an old age and regarded her as the apple of his eye. He did not expect that she would be brought here. The moment the girl saw him, she struggled more and more intensely, and her eyes were filled with a pleading look. "Get lost." Someone kicked Lu Ziyuan away. Lu Ziyuan screamed and knelt heavily on the ground, begging bitterly, "Sir, please let my daughter go. I have done everything you ordered." The black-robed old man laughed cruelly. "Deputy Minister Lu, I'm sorry. Your daughter is the Lady of 4 that I'm looking for. She's the most suitable to be the ferocious soul of the formation." "No." Lu Ziyuan's eyes were bloodshot. "I'm an official of the Imperial Court. You can't touch my daughter. She's only 15 years old. An official of the Imperial Court?" Suo Ming smiled disdainfully. "Since you're an official of the Imperial Court, you should know that this plan concerns the fate of the great Qin dynasty. You should sacrifice yourself for the country." Suo Ming no longer paid attention to him. After grabbing the girl in white with one hand, his fingernails directly pierced into the top of the former's skull, and he muttered, "No." Lu Ziyuan begged again and again. "Retribution. It's really retribution." Lu Ziyuan, once boasted that he was an honest official and loved the people like his own children. However, for the sake of his family, he had to acquiesce in the massacre of the entire county. Now the retribution was on his daughter. Noisy old man. Suo too felt noisy in his ears. His eyes turned cold, and a wisp of spiritual power turned into a poisonous scorpion and attacked Lu Ziyuan. Lu Ziyuan could not help but show despair. Just as the poisonous scorpion was about to fall on him, a purple thunderbolt fell from the sky. The purple lightning struck the scorpion's body with unerring accuracy, and the latter vanished in a thin air with a loud bang. End of this chapter.